Husband revealed wife's affair to her father, handed her divorce papers, then disappeared. Some days just don't go your way, no matter what you do or say. You wish you could just hide under the covers and avoid it all. As the head of the household, you carry the weight of responsibility, even when you wish you didn't. My day started abruptly at 7 a.m., when the police woke me up to report a break-in at my bar. Rushing out, I found my car had a flat tire, adding to the frustration of only having had 4 hours of sleep. Borrowing my wife's car, I headed to the bar, only to discover most of the liquor supply stolen and the entrance smashed in. It looks like it'll be at least 2 weeks before we can reopen. The police labeled it as a robbery, and after the insurance agent documented the damage, I boarded up the entrance, awaiting repairs. Thankfully, insurance will cover the losses until we're back in business. Around lunchtime, as I was about to hop into my wife's car to head home, I heard someone shouting, "Melody, wait!" I turned to see a man rushing towards me, only to stop abruptly when he realized his mistake. He apologized, explaining he had the wrong car, then hurried off. Later at home, I described the encounter to my wife, Melody, but she couldn't place the man. When she asked why I had to borrow her car earlier, I explained about the break-in at the bar and my tire trouble. After a quick sandwich, I fixed my truck's burst valve stem, then made a pit stop for jeans, t-shirts, and a MAGA hat. Returning home, I found Melody's note saying she'd gone shopping. My late shifts on Fridays and Saturdays meant I often arrived home in the morning. After 12 years, I finally shaved my beard. After showering, I got ready to leave, forgetting to brush my hair, leaving my curls wild. The change was so drastic I almost didn't recognize myself. Despite this, I decided to explore other bars in town that night. Heading out, as usual, I found Melody still absent. Sneaking into the bar through the back, I changed into my new clothes and found some reading glasses to complete my transformed appearance. With a clean shave and glasses, I looked much younger, almost like a college student. Realizing my truck was too recognizable, I called a cab to take me to National Car Rental, where I opted for a white, inconspicuous Ford. Starting from the north, I worked my way through town, observing and learning at each stop. I studied the staff, ambiance, clientele, and prices, gathering insights for when I reopened my own establishment. Often, after getting what I needed, I'd leave without finishing my beer. It was at the 7th spot, a hangout for university students by the Mississippi River, where everything changed. Walking into New City Jack, I spotted my wife, Melody, dancing carnally with another man. Anger surged through me, especially realizing he was the same man who had called out to her at lunch. It was clear she'd been lying to me. Melody wore an eye-catching outfit, revealing plenty of cleavage. As a bartender, I knew appearances could be misleading. Seeking a place to observe, a guy offered me a seat for buying a table. Surprised, I accepted and ordered a double gin and tonic. They were regulars, explaining the busy weekends due to university students. Later, I casually asked about a woman in revealing attire. The redhead informed me she's Melody Corbett, often seen with her boss, Payne Richards. They're regulars, possibly more than friends, given Melody's complicated situation with her husband working out of town. Additionally, they often leave together before the last set of the band. I thanked the table, bought another round, then said goodnight. Outside, as I deflated her car tires, I was caught by a redhead named Carrie Ann, who worked with them. She revealed that everyone at the table did too. "How did you know who I was?" I asked. "I didn't. I could tell from your expression that you've been struggling to hide your feelings all night. Despite trying not to, your gaze lingered on her too often. It all clicked when I saw you tampering with her car. Your earlier questions made me wonder what her husband might do if he found out," Carrie explained. "So here I am to find out if my suspicions are correct. You don't work on oil rigs, do you?" "Maybe we should talk later." I used the white Ford Taurus in the corner labeled rental. "Batah Street Bar is closed after being trashed this morning," I confessed. "Melody thinks I'm still there." I used tonight to scope out the competition, visiting different bars. "Take the keys. I don't want you involved if someone else catches me." "You work at BA's on Batah? It's got a great reputation," she noted, taking the keys and leaving. Later, I joined her in the car, relieved nobody else was around. "Where to?" Carrie asked. "Somewhere private," I replied. "This is my apartment, plus I needed a ride home," Carrie grinned. It was a 20-minute drive to her modular home outside of town, where I was surprised to see another car in the driveway. "That's my car. Susan, the brunette from our group, gave me a ride. It helps fend off unwanted attention if you say you're with a friend," she explained. I texted her saying I took a cab home. It was a pristine house, barely used. She fetched us beers, and we settled in for a chat. "Ken, thank you for intervening. I was at a loss," I admitted. "You made me realize I might have overreacted." He doesn't pay. They have a monthly room at the Rada Inn on 4th. If you follow them, you'll see them heading there after closing, Keon divulged. She arrives in jeans and a t-shirt but leaves in dressier attire, returning a few hours later still in jeans. How do you know all this? I inquired. My brother manages there. He's on duty Wednesday through Sunday. They've been involved for over a year, Carrie replied. Melody told him you work on oil rigs, gone for months, implying an open relationship. Seeing my shock, she continued, You had no clue at all? No, I didn't. First, I need evidence, I stated. Second, her parents support my bar. I owe them $20,000. I'll speak with my brother, see what he can do. Maybe they have footage, or she could get a key card, Carrie suggested. I'll see him next Friday at our parents' anniversary. We swapped numbers before I left. I wanted to witness their reaction to her flat tire, helping confirm Carrie's claims. I returned to the bar just before closing, relieved the parking lot was well lit before they turned off the lights. Minutes later, Melody and Payne emerged, holding hands and exchanging quick kisses. He unlocked her car door, but they noticed the flat tire. Checking, they found them all flat. Though I couldn't hear their actions, it suggested a long-term relationship. Payne called for a tow, and within 20 minutes, a truck arrived to inflate the tires. They left for the Rada Inn, confirming Carrie's tip. Later, Melody, with damp hair and a Macy's bag, returned home. It's painful to realize your spouse has betrayed you. I returned the car, took a cab to retrieve my truck, and arrived home at 5 a.m., crashing on the couch. She remained oblivious to her exposed affair. Mel and I met on a double date, and her captivating eyes drew me in instantly. Despite her father's strictness, she won me over, and I visited her every weekend against my father's wishes, slowly winning him over with persistence. She pursued college while I opted for online business courses while working. By her sophomore year, she was engaged, coinciding with the bar being put up for sale the following summer. Visiting with her father, we discussed renovating the dark, outdated bar. He agreed, lending me money from his retirement fund at a 6% interest rate and assisting in the renovation. Together, we transformed it significantly, cutting labor costs. Over a decade, I reduced the loan from $200,000 to under $20,000, doubling its worth. Badi's parents urged us to start a family, but she hesitated. I realized I wasn't deemed suitable to be a father. Quickly securing a commercial loan, I paid off her father, who in turn returned the final payment, having profited from selling the bar's plans. With his confirmation, I cleared the bank loan, leaving only an unsecured overdraft. Repairs and alterations were underway at my bar, yet my wife remained clueless, consumed by her own world. Friday night, disguised again, I tampered with her car's exhaust and his company car's gas tank. Inside their favorite bar, they were oblivious to everything but each other, their behavior drawing attention. Karen stayed close, offering support. I discreetly bribed the bartender for a video compilation, urging discretion. He inquired about my plan. Pulling out my wallet, I whispered, "For your eyes only." After verifying my ID, he grinned, eager to assist in getting back at the cheating woman. He hinted at obtaining Spanish Fly for a special after-hours party next Saturday, aligning perfectly with the bar's reopening on Thursday. Spanish Fly, a potent aphrodisiac, was often prescribed to couples struggling with fertility. That stormy night, feigning sleep, I heard Melody return home at 3 a.m., engaging in a lengthy phone call. The next morning, I rose early, and with her unlocked phone, discovered her conversations with Payne. After realizing I was home, she had forgotten to erase her messages. One message caught my attention, addressed to her older sister. "Sis, I need an alibi for last night. I'm going to say I was with you." I discreetly snapped a photo with my cell phone. Later, Melody explained she had visited her siblings on Tuesday. Carrie Ann Lasher contacted me, suggesting a meetup at the highway truck stop. Arriving, she greeted me with a warm smile, capturing my image for her contacts despite my new mustache and goatee. Melody remained oblivious, I said. "Hi, Red," I greeted her, noting her happiness. "I'm Caleb," she corrected. "You'd be happy too once you see the info my brother shared. He asks you to cover his printing costs." We ordered breakfast, me opting for eggs, sausage, and bacon, Carrie choosing a cheese omelet, both with orange juice and coffee. The info revealed Melody had her own keycard to his room for over 6 months, used regularly on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 7 p.m. I showed Carrie the incriminating message from my wife. "What's your plan?" Carrie inquired. "Are you considering a divorce?" "There's a special party next Saturday for Melody and Payne. I hope to receive plenty of video evidence. It's going to be wild. Once I gather everything, I'll show it to her father to explain why she doesn't want my kids. Simultaneously, she'll be served with divorce papers in their hotel room, all caught on tape. When it's ready, email it to me, please. Why? Carrie questioned. Payne's corporate car is totaled, and there's a foul odor coming from Carrie's car. I'd suggest to our company that an upset husband may be to blame. When should it be sent? I asked, masking my satisfaction. It's quite poetic that she's being served at the same time, Carrie chuckled. May I mention you? I burst into laughter. You can be quite an idiot, Carrie joined in. And yes, you may use my name. I executed it perfectly, I smirked. I'll never spill the details. We arranged for medication through our doctor, and I discreetly switched her birth control pills with sugar pills, buying myself time. I had a stroke of bad luck the other night when someone ran a red light on my way to work, totaling my truck and causing a pileup. Rescuers had to use the jaws of life to free me, and I was taken to the hospital for a thorough checkup. Melody and her parents met me there, and after 6 hours of examination I was released with instructions to rest for at least 2 days and avoid driving for a week. Melody stayed home to care for me, and by Saturday I was eager to return to the bar. While getting ready, I overheard Melody making plans for a night out. I asked her to drop me off at the bar, pretending to check on the changes I had made. Sales doubled that night thanks to the new cook I had hired, and we were sold out for the evening. We began attracting lunch customers with our daily specials that complemented the bar's theme. The restaurant closed at 8, offering pickled eggs or sausages afterward. An elderly gentleman, retired but restless, proposed a partnership, setting up his kitchen and demanding 10% of profits. His scratch-made dishes like shepherd's pie and Irish stew garnered rave reviews, necessitating new kitchen staff. Around 8:30, Carrie Ann Lasher entered with her friend Susan, looking stunning in Irish-themed attire. They sat at a table enjoying the folk music and Irish standards. Carrie Ann's green ensemble drew attention, and I treated them to specialty drinks, saying, "Compliments of the house." "Hey Caleb," Ken said. "Thanks for remembering our preferences. This is my friend Susan." I shook Susan's hand as she excused herself briefly. Opting for a ginger ale, I avoided drinking in my own bar, a promise I'd kept for a decade. Returning to the table, Kian shifted seats to sit beside me, while Susan seemed unfazed, taking the seat early. Kian announced before others arrived, "Susan, Caleb is Melody's ex-husband." "Really?" Susan exclaimed. "Yeah, that's true," I confirmed. "When we first met, I was exploring the town while my bar was under renovation. Carrie caught me doing something I shouldn't have, and after a conversation, I ended up giving her a ride home. We've been friends ever since. He had no clue about his wife's actions while he was at work," Ken explained. "That's why we're here today. I wanted to make sure he wasn't alone," she added. "Why choose this place?" Susan questioned. "It's known as a high-class spot." I chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment, though it wasn't my intention when designing it. I just wanted a nice place to bring my girlfriend." "Caleb not only built this bar, he owns it," Carrie mentioned. Carrie and I exchanged a glance at Susan's surprised expression. Soon, the place filled up, and when the team arrived, our table was packed. Kian and Susan kept me on the dance floor all night, much to the delight of my staff, who noted the unusually crowded dance floor. Surprisingly, everyone agreed the music volume was just right, loud enough to enjoy without overpowering conversation. Closing time came, and I asked Kian for a ride home, where she shared that most of the crew preferred our bar over others, as it wasn't geared toward the university singles crowd. This pleased me, as word of mouth expanded our clientele. Sunday morning, waking up to find Melody absent didn't surprise me. I spent 2 hours trying to locate her, feigning concern while calling family members and confiding in Kian. As I was speaking with her, I received another call, this time from my father-in-law. "Hey Dad," I greeted. "Still no word, huh?" "No, Caleb, that's why I'm calling." Mary and I decided to brunch at the Rada Inn on 4th. "Wish we hadn't. Melody's car is parked here," he revealed. "I'm stuck without my truck, Dad. Can't make it." "You guys enjoy lunch. I'll catch up later," I replied, sounding concerned. My father-in-law was strict, sticking firmly to his beliefs. He saw the world in black and white, finding Anderson Cooper's truth questionable. He was surprised I lacked tattoos, but I valued self-respect. Our society, I argued, prioritized self-interest over community. We debated law and order, one side preaching responsibility, the other endorsing irresponsibility. Racist had become a political weapon, branding dissenters as enemies. I remarked, "If Napoleon were alive, he'd applaud their tactics. To them, dissenters and their followers were just a minority, too wise to adhere to their doctrines. Oppose them, and you're labeled a racist, facing molestation and attacks. Now they infiltrate democratically governed cities, masked, imposing their brand of social justice on us. They only want to hear their beliefs echoed." Though leadership promises investigations and charges, we both know it's unlikely. Equal justice is a bygone ideal, he agreed. The situation will worsen before improving. It mirrors Napoleon's rise to power, a history lesson repeating itself. It's disheartening. One party reintroduces such a divisive culture. These attitudes once sparked the Civil War, raising fears of a repeat. Dad, I concluded, this is our reality now. Melody's father, if he caught her with a lover, might react violently. I informed him of her secret outings, attaching evidence. Updating Carrie, she laughed, asking what I was up to. I said, besides smiling, not much. Want me to come get you so we can hang out? She offered. I admitted I'd love to, but felt it's best not to vanish given their worries. It was around 6 p.m., and as I sat in the kitchen devouring pizza, a car pulled into the driveway. Peering out, I recognized Melody's dad alone. He appeared utterly defeated. Welcoming him inside, I fetched Maker's whiskey and offered him a slice of pizza on a clean plate. Dad, it's serious. After your call, I talked to Mandy first to confirm my suspicions, he explained. I asked the hotel's day manager to contact the night manager early. Turns out Melody's been having an affair for over 6 months. Mandy found out and agreed to keep it quiet, thinking Melody wanted to enjoy a wild, carefree life before settling down. I feigned shock, but partly I was genuinely surprised by Mandy's honesty. As I was leaving, Melody appeared with her lover, wearing a proud grin, like he'd won a prize. I was so shocked I nearly passed out. It took both managers to pull me away, he recounted. I came here because I figured it'd be the last place the cops would search. Dad, I'll call Mom first to let her know you're safe, then I'll check with the Rada Inn manager about pressing charges, I assured him. My mother-in-law was devastated but thanked her husband for visiting me. Melody called to apologize, but her mother wasn't having it. Your apology means nothing, she retorted. You've caused enough trouble already. Afterward, I called Jason Lasher to settle a $5 debt. He joked about his sister, reminding me she never forgets. He chuckled. He suggested paying him in front of her to finally put it to rest. Why? I inquired. It'll save us both a lot of trouble, he replied. She needs to learn to let go. I assured him of my intentions, explaining, I'm still married and won't make any decisions until then. I promised to be careful, I reassured him. He then informed me that the police hadn't been called, and Payne agreed not to press charges thanks to Melody's persuasion. Thanks, Jason, I said, relieved. I shared the good news with Dad before telling Mom, seeing the relief wash over his face. What's your plan to fix this? He asked, visibly concerned. I took out my phone and drafted a message for Melody, showing it to her father. It read, Dad just informed me of everything. Congratulations, you've successfully dismantled our family in a single day. Don't return home. The Melody I knew is gone. If you choose him over us, our marriage ends now. Otherwise, it's a slow path away over the next 6 months. I delivered it earnestly, knowing trust, once broken, can't be restored. Let me end this marriage swiftly and with dignity, he declared, sending the message. Mary always said Melody married her father. This only proved her right. After pizza and drinks, we headed to Lumberland for 3 deadbolt locks. Soon after installation, the family arrived. Mandy's parents, Jack and Mary, along with their adorable kittens. They left around 10. I texted Carrie Ann, "Are you awake?" She promptly called back, "Are you all right?" Jason called and filled me in, Carrie inquired. Payne's got 2 black eyes and a broken nose. Your father-in-law gave him a punching before Jason intervened. I chuckled, replying, he used to box amateur when he was younger. I'd love to witness that, I remarked. After the incident, he came here lost. I learned from your brother that no charges were filed, so I updated the family. They had gathered to discuss the situation and had already left. What about Melody? Carrie inquired. I shared that my father-in-law had posed the same question. I mentioned sending Melody a message and asked him to read it, to which he responded, "Let me end this marriage with dignity," and sent it. Your father-in-law spoke for you. Couldn't you forgive her and give her another chance? Carrie questioned. No, to him, she's shattered trust beyond repair. He sees things in black and white. She made her choice, and she'll have to live with it. Consequences be damned, I asserted. I'm with him, I added. He even helped me change the locks. Any updates on last night? Kian inquired. Haven't had a chance to check, been swamped, I chuckled. But I suppose it doesn't matter now. I'll stick to my promise. Give it until Monday night, Carrie assured. From what I've gathered, it might surprise you. Why is that? I asked. Word is the bartender at New City Jack has a history in certain types of videos, Carrie chuckled. If that's true, it wouldn't shock me if he took advantage of the situation. Are you serious? I queried. Absolutely, Caleb. But back to business. When's our official first date? How about on the day Melody gets served? I suggested with a grin. I'll even arrange for her to be served at the office. Remember, you're sending red roses beforehand. I want to drive home the point that she's violated my standards of fidelity, Carrie remarked. Tomorrow at work will be quite intriguing. After ending the call, I reflected on what I knew about Carrie Ann. She was around 24, unmarried and attractive, standing at about 5 feet 8 inches tall. While not extremely slender, she possessed a figure my grandfather would have deemed fit for starting a family. Despite working in the same regional office of the dental company as Melody and her lover, she wasn't part of the management team. As far as I knew, she was discerning about who she let into her life, maintaining close ties with her family and inner circle, which included me. Enjoying dancing and drinking, she was sociable, like me. However, Carrie, with her cautious nature, left me with more questions than answers. Her level of education seemed higher than her current position suggested, hinting at underlying complexities. As I prepared for bed, I hummed, "Hey Carrie Ann, what's the game anyone can play?" Anticipating the challenges of Monday, I arranged for my assistant to manage the bar until I resolved my personal matters. Mandy arrived with Jack's truck to assist in packing her sister's belongings. We stopped by a packing supplies store to ensure we did it properly. Starting with the master bedroom, while I assembled boxes, Mandy began sorting through dresser drawers. "Caleb, I'm appalled by my sister's actions," Mandy expressed. I never condoned it and stayed silent, hoping Melody would come to her senses. "When Dad told me about your message, I broke down and confessed the truth. I've only been aware of it for a month." He took it as his own failure, believing he didn't raise her properly. "I think Mom feels the same way." "Mandy, I'm still grappling with my emotions. The night Melody texted you, I stumbled upon it accidentally. I was at the bar merely scouting the competition when I took that photo. My intention was to gather evidence for a confrontation. I never anticipated it would unravel like this, and I deeply regret it." "Didn't you inform her that the bar had been broken into and was closed?" she inquired. "I did, but looking back, I realized she heard but chose not to heed. I should have recognized it as her way of signaling the end of our marriage. Melody was always shielded by our father, as was I. Mandy believes I needed to experience parenthood to grasp the sacrifices he made. I strive to instill those values in my children. Melody, even from a young age, lacked a sense of right and wrong. That trait persists, and I can't say I wish I had noticed it sooner. I often think about your parents," I admitted. "Few can claim their father-in-law as one of their closest friends." As Mandy reached her sister's carnal garments, she requested sewing scissors, which I promptly supplied. Before packing Melody's underwear, she cut out the lace and between the cups of the bras, perhaps sending a message to her sister. All the altered items were tossed into a box. I appreciated her gesture, as I couldn't bring myself to do it. It took us roughly 4 hours to complete half of the task. I suggested treating her to lunch before resuming, and she agreed, taking me to a new Chinese restaurant named Yumi, offering an impressive array of food at a reasonable price. We arrived just as the lunch rush was winding down and encountered Payne on his way out, sporting 2 black eyes, a broken nose, and swollen lips. My father-in-law had certainly made an impact. "Mandy, my father did that to him," she exclaimed. "It'll take 2 months for it to heal. An eyewitness told me that your dad only hit him 3 times before they intervened." "From the looks of Payne, my dad still packs a punch," I remarked, surprising Mandy. "If they hadn't stopped him, would Payne be in the hospital?" "I'm not sure," I replied, stepping out of the car. As we approached the restaurant entrance, Payne emerged and urged Mandy to unblock Melody. "Payne, have you met my brother-in-law, Caleb?" she asked. I stepped forward, and Payne's face paled as he realized I was the one driving Melody's car. He raised his fist, preparing for a fight. "If that's how you want it, Payne, fine. Mandy will confirm you started it," I said. As soon as she agreed, I swiftly kicked him in the groin, then punched him twice. I unleashed a flurry of punches until he collapsed, then delivered a final blow to finish it. Feeling a release, I escorted Mandy inside, where we were seated. I ordered unsweetened tea, and she opted for a cola. "Before we eat, did my daddy teach you those moves?" Mandy inquired. "Not exactly, but it's part of my job to handle trouble when needed," I explained. I didn't want a fair fight. I wanted to end it quickly. As Mandy and I filled our plates, my phone rang. It was Melody, but I chose not to answer. "I think her boyfriend already gave her a call," I remarked. "Too bad he won't be giving her anything soon." Mandy burst into laughter, drawing attention. I vowed not to joke with her in public again. "That was hilarious. I almost peed myself." She chuckled. "I'm glad you didn't. How would you explain it to Jack?" "I might have yelled flash flood," I teased. "Stop it," she said, laughing once more. After lunch, we resumed packing until 5 when we unloaded at Jack's storage unit. I paid the deposit and rent, leaving the keys with the owner. I texted Melody to update her. My insurer called with a low offer for my totaled truck, so I requested a replacement with similar mileage. This would cost them more in the long run. Returning home, Carrie and Susan were waiting. I introduced them to Mandy as Melody's colleagues and invited everyone inside. Mandy informed Jack of the situation, and we all relaxed with some beers. "We stopped by to check on you," Carrie said, "and to see if you'd like to join us for dinner," added Susan. "Several people had a rough day at work," she continued. "Payne was seriously injured this morning and went to the hospital this afternoon. Melody was apartment hunting during lunch." "I can't say I feel sorry for any of them," Mandy replied. "We spent the day moving Melody's stuff into storage. Caleb let me pack her underwear, making it easy access for her future lovers. I notified the company via email about Payne and Melody's misconduct," Carrie Ann explained. Attached was a picture of Payne's face after Melody's father caught them. I made it clear that office romances, especially long-term affairs, were unacceptable. "Do you hate my sister that much?" asked Mandy. "No, I dislike her behavior. I come from a family where we're responsible for our actions," Carrie replied. "If we did something good, we were praised. If we did something bad, we faced consequences. I just think they got away with it for too long." I excused myself to take a call from the bar. Later, Carrie filled me in on what I missed. "So, Carrie Ann, how long have you been in love with Caleb?" asked Mandy sincerely. "The night I met him, he discovered his wife's affair," Carrie recounted. "I saw him control his anger until he left the scene. Instead of confronting her publicly, he deflated her tires. He didn't want me involved, showing his consideration. He was prepared to face consequences alone. We talked that night. He didn't curse or humiliate her. He sought evidence to explain gently to his father-in-law why Melody didn't want children. Caleb has always been empathetic," Mandy added. "He acts as a peacemaker in family issues despite his own pain. You have my approval, but if you hurt him, I won't hesitate to act. When your father found out about Melody and Payne, he came here to be with Caleb," Carrie revealed. "Did you know he sent the text that ended their marriage?" "No, I didn't. That explains why they didn't discuss our attempt to reconcile," Mandy responded. "Call Jack and the kids to meet us at the bar," I instructed. "I'm making dinner for everyone, including Susan and Carrie. Give me a moment to change." Upon returning, I found Mandy gone and Susan in the kitchen. Carrie had cleaned up and we exchanged appreciative words. "I like your sister," Susan remarked. "I think we'll be good friends." "She speaks highly of you too," I replied. As she embraced me, we shared a moment that hinted at what was to come. Walking hand in hand, we headed to the car, sharing smiles with Susan. Carrie took the front seat and I sat in the back with a sense of anticipation. Susan remarked on our slow progress. Carrie said, "We're taking small steps until we sort out this mess. I want to be a stay-at-home mom with a husband who shares my values." Arriving at Bia's house together, Mandy's children greeted us enthusiastically. Mandy mentioned how well I connect with her daughters, often calming them down. I noted the need for more bar stools. Mandy parked the truck at her husband's store. The shepherd's pie received praise, even from older patrons. Carrie, seated next to me, shared a dessert made by the chef. Carrie tasted my drink, surprised to find it was non-alcoholic. She whispered teasingly, and I responded with a promise I made to myself about not drinking before opening the bar. Tears welled in her eyes and she looked proud. My assistant reported increased sales at the bar and over $1,000 in food sales. I paid my bill with my debit card, emphasizing the importance of honesty to my employees. "Not everyone agrees," Carrie said, "but if you think about it, it adds up." I left a 20% tip when settling the bill. Then Susan and Carrie drove me home. Opening my email, I found a video from a bartender named Jack showcasing the events of Saturday night. It was titled Surviving University Night and featured Melody and Payne. The video included legally witnessed contracts and was now for sale on an adult site. I texted Carrie the update, noting that Melody would ensure her parents never saw it. Later, Carrie arrived, noticeably transformed. "I'm stunned," I managed to say. "Who are you and what have you done with my Carrie Ann?" "Do you like it?" Carrie responded. "I've transformed my appearance for good. Your message allows me to explain. I've been working undercover as an investigator for the FDA within Richard's Dental Supply Corporation for over 2 years," Carrie Ann revealed. "They've been selling contaminated materials from China, hiding their sources through multiple companies. Most buyers unknowingly have lead in their dental products. Payne, with a history of stalking married women, poses a threat to Melody. And then I came along and diverted your attention," I interjected. "Is Susan also an agent?" I asked. "Yes, she is. We met in college while studying accounting, Carrie explained. Before we proceed, I need you to pass the video and any related information to my FBI contact. The bartender at New City Jack is involved in similar activities as Melody and Payne. Your input could help dismantle their operation. We scented jointly. I poured her a glass of white wine and grabbed a cold beer for myself. As we chatted, her phone rang. She said it was my mom. I offered her privacy, but she declined, so I put it on speakerphone. "Hi, Mom. Looks like you got my message," Carrie said, smiling. "Did you really say you were leaving the FDA?" her mom asked. "Yes, Susan and I will wrap up this week, then start our own firm," Carrie explained. "We'll testify when needed, but plan to stay local for now." "We've been urging you to settle down for years. Why now?" her mom inquired. "Mom, why did you move back home?" Carrie laughed. "Okay, Mom," Carrie said. "I met someone who's piqued my interest enough to consider settling." "Is this the Caleb you've mentioned?" asked Carrie's mother. "Mom, that's enough. Goodbye," Carrie said, ending the call. "Empty nest syndrome, right?" I joked. "Tomorrow, I have a divorce lawyer appointment. Susan and I are leaving Richards," Carrie disclosed. "The FDA is stepping in on Wednesday. They want us out before executing warrants, even though they already know where to look." Carrie left around 1 a.m. Tuesday. I sorted the rental car with the insurance company, then headed to the lawyer's office to start the divorce process. I was the first to arrive at her place that day. She asked for proof, so I recounted the entire story and let her listen to my conversation with my father-in-law. I also provided printouts from the Ramada Inn. "It would strengthen our position if she agrees to my proposed settlement," I explained. "We should arrange a meeting with her and her attorney to show them what's on this flash drive. It depicts what occurred last Saturday night. With their consent, I've even forwarded the email confirming it." "What makes you certain she won't contest this?" my feminist lawyer inquired. "Take the flash drive home and watch the 2-hour video alone. I keep the business. She gets the house. No alimony," I suggested. "And if she refuses?" she pressed. "Then every family member will receive a copy anonymously," I stated, rising to leave. "Caleb," she sighed, "can you always be this ruthless?" "Only when someone's actions leave me no alternative," I responded. She made me realize the last 12 years of my life were largely wasted, I reflected. Meanwhile, Carrie and Susan resigned in person from their employer's office. Melody, the office manager, was stunned by their departure. Filling their roles would pose a challenge. Payne, visibly injured, spent the day in his office fielding calls from headquarters. Aware his position was secured due to family ties, he agreed to cover the cost of 2 company cars from his own pocket. It was made clear he must either marry the woman or terminate her employment. Post-divorce. After quitting my lawyers, I went to a real estate broker I knew. I wanted to find out what office buildings were for sale in the area. One of them, he thought, could be a gold mine if the new owner could find a respectable anchor. It was only 5 blocks to downtown from the Bisha store on Bia. It was now owned by the bank I was dealing with. He said he thought the bank was getting tired of wearing it. With a little facelift, interior painting, and landscaping, the 3-story building could be cleaned up quickly and attract attention. After looking it over, I agreed. We went back to his office and wrote up a proposal with a low price, contingent on getting financing and inspection approval. I asked him if I could show the potential client a space that I thought would be perfect for him. He gave me the keys and told me to bring it in tomorrow around 2 in the afternoon. I texted, "Could you and Susan swing by the bar? I need to show you both something." She quickly said sure. I called my father-in-law and asked if he had an hour or 2 to spare. He asked me why. I explained that I was afraid I had to sell the bar to settle the divorce case and needed to start getting ready for a fresh start. I had an office building I was considering and I wanted his opinion. He agreed and I picked him up. We walked through the building, checking out the electrical. He pointed out a few things that the building inspector wouldn't notice but could be used as bargaining chips. He asked what they were asking for. I told him and then disclosed what I was offering. "Smart move," he said. "You can always go up, but you can't go down. Personally, I think you should go for it. You need a couple of new anchors." "Do you have someone in mind?" I said. "Just 2 ladies who were starting their own accounting firm, which is now working with Melody and me since I may be forced to sell Beja." He grinned, offering, "If you secure it, I'll assist in renovating the space to accommodate both of you. It's more spacious than your current location, with ample parking. Mandy speaks highly of them. She believes they're trustworthy." "Thanks, Dad," I acknowledged. "Do you reckon Melody will stake a claim on your business in the divorce?" he inquired. "The Melody I once knew probably won't, but the one I'm divorcing likely will," I responded. "She'll shift blame onto me to justify her actions." My father-in-law looked taken aback. "But that's not accurate," he exclaimed. "That's not what you and I know," I asserted. Name one scenario, aside from a legal contract, where truth would influence a decision. I can't, and neither can you. In divorce proceedings, it all hinges on what the judge believes. If Melody and I had kids, I'd be doomed in any court's eyes, he lamented. But it's unjust, he insisted. Dad, we share your sentiment, but we're in the minority. We still cling to notions of right and wrong. Nowadays, most only prioritize themselves. The era when society benefited collectively is long gone, I remarked. Evidence of that is the growing homelessness in California, the so-called promised land for most. Reality is what the media feeds them on a given day, and it's fleeting, I remarked. Later at the bar, my realtor informed me that they accepted the offer but wouldn't provide financing. Despite my loyalty, I began seeking financing through LendingTree, providing my tax returns for the past 5 years to demonstrate my commitment. Susan, Carrie, and I strolled through the vacant ground floor of the building I aimed to purchase. Formerly a call center, I outlined my vision for a new bar and restaurant. Then inquired about their office space requirements. We can't afford the finishing costs, Susan admitted. That's why we're seeking move and ready options. Determined, I resolved to cover the expenses myself and develop the space. As the bar gains traction, I'll know about financing by Friday. I anticipate acquiring the building below its appraised value, I assured them. Melody's dad will assist us with construction, reducing expenses significantly. Why go through all this? Carrie questioned. The court might compel me to sell Bite You as part of the divorce settlement, so I'm planning ahead, I explained candidly. Draft your needs for the next 2 years, I instructed. I'll proceed from there. Susan raised another possibility. What if you don't need to sell the bar? My assistant's promotion and my surgeries necessitate contingency planning, I replied, wincing at Wednesday's pain. Melody, accompanied by her parents and the FDA, made rounds to all regional offices and headquarters. She received a copy of my divorce petition citing infidelity. By Friday, Melody and Payne departed for Richard's headquarters, finalizing the deal. I managed to secure an additional $250,000 for remodeling. We commenced interior renovation on the ground floor, stripping it down to concrete walls and essentials. Our draftsman crafted detailed plans, incorporating an elevator shaft for 3 floors and additional plumbing for Carrie and Susan's section. Contractors installed 2 entrances, one from the street and another from the main lobby. I had to excavate concrete for a new elevator shaft and erect an interior concrete wall. Simultaneously, Carrie and Susan flew to Washington every Sunday, returning Friday, assisting as much as possible. Negotiations between my soon-to-be ex's lawyer and mine were futile. Fed up, I arranged a meeting between all parties, prepared for confrontation. After completing the elevator shaft, I sandblasted the building to restore its original color and refresh the red brick. The crew upgraded the flat roof, then turned to interior renovations. Her office featured restrooms, a lunchroom, a reception area, and 6 offices. Mine included public restrooms, a storage area, and a band platform, with a dance floor. Contractors completed her section within 2 weeks. 2 more office buildings were acquired nearby. 2 were sold and converted into a new Bank of America branch. The local paper heralded neighborhood redevelopment. My meeting with my ex and her lawyer was set for Friday. The kitchen equipment arrived and was set up on the white tile floor. An oak bar counter was constructed and dark pine laminate flooring was laid. Electrical work was completed on both sides. Tables, chairs, and restaurant booths were ordered and scheduled for delivery on Monday. All of this was accomplished in less than 2 months. My real estate agent secured a long-term tenant, a legal team occupying the 2nd and 3rd floors, covering mortgage, taxes, and associated expenses. At a meeting with my attorney, Melody revealed her desire for me to embrace fatherhood. I listened to her claims skeptically, laughing at her assertion of still being on birth control when conception occurred. I proposed a DNA test to validate her claim, then instructed my attorney to reveal the contents of the stick I provided. Melody paled upon learning it had over 2 million hits, each generating $5.99. As legally married partners at the time, I asserted entitlement to 5% of proceeds from her one-night adventure, a marital asset. I gave her the weekend to propose a fair agreement. Otherwise, I threatened to make the contents of the disc public on Tuesday. The room fell silent. I know who the father of your child is, Melody, and his name is Payne, I stated firmly before heading for the door. You made your choice, face the consequences, and accept them. 10 minutes later, my divorce attorney called. Caleb, with Melody's offer, $350,000 in exchange for keeping his business in-house, under the condition of silence about certain matters, and relinquishing rights to the movie. Draw up the settlement agreement, Caleb instructed. But hold on to the funds until I'm satisfied. When will the divorce be finalized? Caleb inquired, eager to move forward. I'll schedule a court date now, but it won't be legal until 30 days after the judge approves, the attorney explained. Dressed sharply, Caleb awaited Carrie and Susan's arrival at the airport with roses in hand, red for Carrie, yellow for Susan. Their faces lit up as they saw him, and he greeted them with checks in hand, symbolizing their financial agreements. With luggage in tow, they headed to Caleb's new sedan, purchased with a cash settlement he found acceptable. Before heading home, I want to show you your finished offices, Caleb informed them. The rest of the building is rented by a group of lawyers. Carrie inquired about the losses incurred, to which Caleb replied with a laugh, confirming it was indeed significant. In a subsequent meeting with their lawyers, Caleb presented evidence of Melody's earnings from the video, arguing that since it was filmed during their marriage, he was entitled to 50% of the income. Carrie shed tears of relief as I explained our new situation. I would retain my business, my house, and receive an additional $350,000. She had a week to remove any furniture she wanted from the house. What are your plans for the house? She asked. I'll sell it, I replied. I don't want past memories to hinder our future. Tears of joy streamed down Carrie's face. Susan, you're still as slow as molasses in January, Susan remarked. It took you over 2 months to express what I knew the night we met Mandy and her family, but when you finally do, you do it right. Even Susan, typically reserved, became emotional when she saw their newly approved offices. The warm, professional space, adorned with oak and pastel colors, impressed them all. All that's left is to name the business, register it, and purchase office equipment and furniture, I said with a smile. You ladies have a good eye for colors, Carrie said, embracing me. I love you. Finally, I nodded and kissed her, signaling an end to holding back. Later, I accompanied Susan to Carrie's house, where they both now lived. It was Carrie's first time traveling home with me. We spent hours opening up to each other and catching up. After breakfast at our favorite deli, I took her to Gerard's to look at rings. She found one she loved but hesitated at the price. I insisted on buying it, envisioning it as a future gift for our daughter's 16th birthday. Even the salesperson was moved as she processed the sale. The first person Carrie called to share the news was Susan. We agreed to meet at Bisha restaurant on Bhatia at 6. I suggested she invite her parents, eager for them to meet the man who convinced them to return home. I called Daniel, my former father-in-law, and his wife, whom I always addressed as Mom and Dad, inviting them over. They happily accepted. I shared with them that Melody and I reached a divorce agreement set for next week. Upon learning that Mel and Payne had announced their engagement yet hadn't spoken, I asked Mandy to bring the whole family. I arranged for the chef to prepare a special meal, explaining the occasion. He promised a traditional Irish lamb stew and cider cookies, adding his own twist. The bartender was instructed to serve Irish coffee with fresh cream, except for me. Unexpectedly, a private table was reserved for us at the back of the restaurant for added privacy. Daniel and Mary, my in-laws, arrived first, allowing me to introduce Carrie to them. The surprise came when Carrie's well-known parents, Bob and Roseanne Lasher, joined us. It seemed Daniel kept them informed while at work. When Jack and Mandy arrived, their young children rushed to me, aged 4 and 3, embracing me tightly. Carrie opened her arms, and the younger ones gravitated toward her. During a lavish dinner, we shared the news that Carrie got her ring, stunning everyone with its size. Carrie explained how it happened, and my response, bringing her mother to tears and earning approval from relatives. When Carrie said it was fine for me to call them Mom and Dad, I assured them they would always be Mom and Dad to me. The exceptional food delighted us, as always. When the bill came, Carrie's father insisted on covering it. Despite wanting to protest, a nudge from Carrie stopped me. After everyone left except her parents, we recounted our story in detail. Bob asked why I never drank Irish coffee. Carrie explained my policy of abstaining from booze in my own establishments to set an example for employees. Impressed, Bob joked that our restaurant was fit for his daughter and friend, then praised the office design and my principles. Daniel regarded me as the son he never had, seeing me as someone who stands firm in his values. Off the record, Daniel is the father figure I never had. Growing up in a poor household without a father, my mother raised me and my sister alone after he left before they were even married. Meeting Daniel through Melody, I found him to be tough, street smart, and unyielding, yet always principled. He taught me invaluable lessons about strength and integrity, shaping who I am today. Daniel is my father, not by blood, but by choice, and I owe much of my moral compass to him. We stood in silence until the ladies returned, And then Carrie's father spoke, expressing approval of our relationship. He welcomed me into their family, a gesture that left Carrie in shock as he had never before approved of anyone. We spent the night together and it was hard to see her leave. Susan and Carrie aimed to leave the FDA on good terms. I listed the house on Monday, signed the divorce agreement Wednesday, and received the trust funds Friday. I watched the judge finalize the divorce. Melody didn't show. I picked up my assistant and showed him the new bar layout. He agreed to manage it for $75,000 a year, plus a 10% bonus based on net income. Charlie's Bar and Grill was born. 3 years later, Corbett and Sullivan accounting firm thrived, while Charlie's Bar and Grill became a local favorite. Meanwhile, Melody and Payne's marriage crumbled in court as she caught him with her best friend. Despite this, her family remained distant. The birth of our twins brought joy amid life's challenges. Carrie playfully named me during labor pains, and we proudly introduced our red-haired babies to our relatives. My pregnant wife refused to take a paternity test, and I suspect my stepbrother might be the father. I, 32 male, have been married to Angela, 29 female, for 3 years now. We dated for 2 years before getting married. Angela is currently 7 months pregnant with our first child, at least. I thought it was our child until recently. I've been living with a growing suspicion that Angela might be cheating on me with my stepbrother, Jonathan, 30 male. Jonathan and I grew up together after our parents married when we were teenagers. We've always been close, and he often visits our house. I started noticing some strange behavior about 4 months ago. Angela and Jonathan seemed to be spending more time together, often whispering and stopping their conversations when I entered the room. I caught them exchanging looks that seemed too intimate for a brother-in-law and sister-in-law relationship. One day, I came home early from work and heard laughter coming from our bedroom. When I walked in, I found Angela and Jonathan sitting on the bed, looking nervous. They claimed they were just talking about baby stuff, but something felt off. I also noticed that Angela's phone was always face down when she wasn't using it, and she started taking it with her even to the bathroom. When I asked her about it casually, she got defensive and accused me of not trusting her. As the pregnancy progressed, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. The timing of the pregnancy coincided with a period when Jonathan was staying with us for a few weeks due to some renovations at his place. I started wondering if the baby could be his. Yesterday, we had a baby shower at our house. It was a joyful event with friends and family celebrating the upcoming arrival of our baby. Jonathan was there too, of course. I couldn't help but notice how attentive he was to Angela, always making sure she was comfortable and had everything she needed. After all the guests left, including Jonathan, who said he had some errands to run, I decided it was time to confront Angela. I didn't want to accuse her outright of cheating, so I thought asking for a paternity test would be a good way to measure her reaction. I approached Angela as she was cleaning up in the kitchen. "Hey Angela, can we talk for a minute?" I asked. She turned to me with a smile still glowing from the excitement of the baby shower. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath and said, "I've been thinking about this for a while now. I want us to get a paternity test done for the baby." The smile vanished from Angela's face, replaced by a look of shock and anger. "What? Why would you want that?" I tried to keep my voice calm. "I just think it's a good idea, for medical reasons and stuff." Angela's face turned red. "Medical reasons? Are you serious? You think I cheated on you, don't you?" I didn't want to reveal my suspicions about her and Jonathan, so I stuck to my story. "No, it's not that. I just want to be sure. It's a simple test, Angela. If I'm the father, as you say I am, then what's the problem?" "The problem is that you don't trust me," Angela shouted. "I can't believe you're asking me this after everything we've been through, after all the love and support I've given you. You have the audacity to question if this is your child?" I tried to reason with her. "Angela, please calm down. It's not healthy for the baby for you to get so upset. I'm not accusing you of anything, I just want to do the test." "No," Angela said firmly. "I absolutely refuse to get a paternity test. This is your child and I can't believe you would even suggest otherwise. How dare you?" She stormed out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there, feeling more suspicious than ever. Her reaction only confirmed my fears that something was indeed wrong. I spent a sleepless night thinking about what to do next. The next morning, I decided to reach out to Angela's parents. They had always been kind to me, and I hoped they might be able to talk some sense into Angela. I called Angela's mom, Linda, and asked if I could meet with her and Angela's dad, Robert. They agreed, and I went over to their house while Angela was at her prenatal yoga class. When I arrived, Linda and Robert welcomed me warmly, but I could see concern in their eyes. We sat down in their living room and I started to explain the situation. "I don't know how to say this," I began, "but I have reason to believe that Angela might be cheating on me with Jonathan." Linda and Robert exchanged a look that made me think they weren't entirely surprised by this information. I continued, I asked Angela for a paternity test yesterday and she completely lost it. She refused to do it and accused me of not trusting her. I didn't tell her about my suspicions regarding Jonathan, but her reaction makes me think I might be right. Robert sighed heavily. Son, we were afraid something like this might happen. I looked at them, confused. What do you mean? Linda reached out and patted my hand. We love Angela, she's our daughter, but we know she has a history of being unfaithful in her relationships. This information hit me like a ton of bricks. You mean she's cheated before? Why didn't anyone tell me this before we got married? Robert shook his head. We hoped she had changed when she met you. She seemed different, more mature. We thought maybe she had finally grown out of her old habits. But you suspected she might be cheating on me? I asked, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. Linda nodded sadly. We've noticed some signs lately, the way she talks about Jonathan, the secretive phone calls. We were hoping we were wrong. I sat there trying to process this new information. So, what should I do? She refuses to take the paternity test. Robert leaned forward. We're with you on this, son. You have the right to know if that child is yours. We'll talk to Angela, try to make her see reason. Linda added, and if she still refuses, well, there are other ways to get a paternity test done after the baby is born. We'll support you through this, whatever happens. I felt a wave of relief knowing I had their support. Thank you. I really appreciate your honesty and your help. As I left their house, I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was grateful for the support of Angela's parents. On the other hand, I was devastated to learn about Angela's history of infidelity. It made me question everything about our relationship. When I got home, Angela was already there. She was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. As soon as I walked in, she started talking. I can't believe you went to my parents behind my back, she said, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. I sat down across from her. Angela, we need to talk about this. Your parents told me about your past, your history with infidelity. Angela's face crumpled. That was in the past. I've changed. I love you. If you love me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, then why won't you agree to the paternity test? If I'm the father as you claim, then the test will prove it. Because it's insulting, Angela cried. It shows you don't trust me, and involving my parents, how could you? I'm not accusing you of anything, I said. And now, with you refusing the paternity test, what am I supposed to think? Angela burst into tears. I can't believe this is happening. I thought we were happy. I thought you loved me. I do love you, Angela. That's why this is so hard, but I need to know the truth. Angela just shook her head, continuing to cry. She didn't give me a straight answer, which only fueled my suspicions. I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days, I said, standing up. But I need some time to think. Please, Angela, for the sake of our marriage and this child, agree to the paternity test. As I packed a bag, Angela watched me from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Please don't go, she begged, but I knew I needed space to clear my head and figure out what to do next. I left the house, feeling like my whole world was crumbling around me. Over the next few days, I stayed at a nearby hotel trying to make sense of everything. I received several calls and messages from Angela, alternating between apologies and angry accusations. I also got a call from Jonathan, asking what was going on. I didn't tell him about my suspicions, just said that Angela and I were going through some issues. Update: the week following my departure from our shared home was one of the most challenging periods of my life. Each day felt like an eternity as I grappled with the possibility that the life I had built with Angela might have been built on lies. The quiet of my hotel room offered little comfort, serving instead as an echo chamber for my doubts and fears. On the 7th day of my self-imposed exile, my phone rang. Angela's name flashed on the screen, and I felt a familiar mix of hope and dread as I answered. Hello, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. I can't do this anymore. Angela's voice came through, shaky and filled with emotion. There was a rawness to it that I hadn't heard before, and it immediately put me on edge. What do you mean, Angela? I asked, sitting up straighter in my chair. There was a pause, punctuated by what sounded like a stifled sob. Then, if you don't believe me, if you don't trust me, then I don't want to keep this baby. Her words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. When I finally found my voice, it was barely above a whisper. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you're going to doubt me and question whether this is your child, maybe it's better if there is no child at all, she replied, her voice taking on a bitter edge that I'd never heard from her before. Anger surged through me, hot and sudden. Are you threatening our unborn child just because I asked for a paternity test? I demanded, my voice rising. Do you realize what you're saying, Angela? I'm saying I can't live like this, she shouted back. I can't carry this child knowing that its father doesn't even believe it's his. All you have to do is take the test, I said, trying to rein in my anger. If I'm the father, like you claim, then what's the problem? The problem is that you don't trust me, Angela cried. The problem is that you've destroyed everything we had. Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at the phone in disbelief, my mind reeling from what had just transpired. The Angela I thought I knew would never have even considered harming our child. This threat, this manipulation, only served to deepen my suspicions and my resolve. With shaking hands, I dialed Angela's parents' number. Linda answered on the third ring. Hello, she said, her voice warm as always. Linda, it's me, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Something's happened. I need to talk to you and Robert. Can I come over? There must have been something in my voice because Linda's tone immediately changed. Of course, dear. Come right over. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in Robert and Linda's living room, recounting my conversation with Angela. As I spoke, I watched their faces shift from concern to shock to outright dismay. When I finished, Robert leaned forward, his face grim. We can't let her go through with this, he said firmly. This isn't just about the paternity test anymore. This is about the well-being of our grandchild. Linda nodded in agreement, reaching out to squeeze my hand. We need to make her understand the gravity of the situation, she said. This isn't a game, this is a life we're talking about. I took a deep breath, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. In the midst of all this chaos, it was comforting to know I had allies. Thank you, I said. I was afraid, I don't know, that you might take her side in all this. Robert shook his head. We love our daughter, he said, but we can't condone this behavior and we certainly can't let her make a decision like this out of spite or fear. Linda and Robert exchanged a look, seeming to have a silent conversation. After a moment, Robert cleared his throat. There's something else you should know, he said, his voice heavy. We were planning to give Angela a significant portion of our property and wealth as a gift for the child. It's a tradition in our family to provide for the next generation. I nodded, not quite sure where this was going. But given the circumstances, Robert continued, we won't be doing that unless she agrees to the paternity test and comes clean about everything. We can't in good conscience provide for a child whose parentage is in question, especially if Angela is considering alternatives. The implication of his words hung heavy in the air. It was a drastic move, but I understood their reasoning. This wasn't just about money or property, it was about forcing Angela to face the consequences of her actions and make the right choice. What do we do now? I asked, looking between Robert and Linda. We confront her, Linda said firmly. Together. She needs to understand that her actions don't just affect her, or even just you and her. They affect all of us. And most importantly, they affect an innocent child. We decided to call Angela and ask her to come over. She arrived about an hour later, her eyes red and puffy, her hand protectively cradling her swollen belly. When she saw me sitting with her parents, she froze in the doorway. What's going on? She asked, her voice small and uncertain. Sit down, Angela, Robert said, his voice gentle but firm. We need to talk. Angela moved to the couch, perching on the edge as if ready to flee at any moment. Linda took a deep breath and began to speak. Angela, honey, we know about the call you made to your husband, she said. We know what you said about the baby. Angela's face crumpled, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. You don't understand, she sobbed. None of you understand what this is like. Then help us understand, I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the turmoil inside me. Help us understand why you'd threaten our child rather than take a simple test. It's not simple, Angela cried. It's not just a test. It's you not trusting me, not believing in me. It's you thinking I could betray you like that. Robert leaned forward, his face serious. Angela, we've always taught you that actions have consequences, he said. Your refusal to take this test, your threats against the child, these actions have consequences too. Angela looked at her father, confusion, mixing with the pain on her face. What do you mean? Linda took over, her voice gentle but firm. We were planning to give you a significant gift when the baby was born. She explained, a portion of our property and wealth to help you start your new family on the right foot. But given what's happened, we can't do that unless you agree to the paternity test and tell the whole truth about what's been going on. The color drained from Angela's face. She looked from her mother to her father, then to me, her eyes wide with disbelief. You're "You're blackmailing me?" she whispered. "We're trying to protect our grandchild," Robert corrected. "And we're trying to get you to do the right thing, Angela, because right now, your behavior is not just hurting your husband, it's hurting your child, and it's hurting this family." Angela's breathing quickened, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she looked around the room like a cornered animal. I could almost see the thoughts racing behind her eyes, the calculations and considerations. And then something seemed to break inside her. Her shoulders slumped, and a long, keening wail escaped her lips. She buried her face in her hands, her body shaking with sobs. We all sat in stunned silence, watching as Angela fell apart before our eyes. After what felt like an eternity, she raised her head. Her face was a mess of tears and smeared makeup, but her eyes held a resignation that sent a chill down my spine. "The baby," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "it's not yours." Despite my suspicions, despite all the signs and clues, hearing the truth from Angela's lips felt like a physical blow. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. I just stared at her, feeling as if the ground had disappeared from beneath my feet. "I'm so sorry," Angela continued, her words coming out in a rush now. "I've been having an affair with Jonathan. It started before I even knew I was pregnant. I hoped the baby was yours, but deep down, I knew. I knew it probably wasn't." The room fell into a heavy silence. I looked at Robert and Linda, seeing my own shock and pain mirrored on their faces. Angela sat there, small and broken, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this?" I finally managed to ask, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. "How could you lie to me for so long? How could you let me believe this child was mine?" Angela shook her head, seemingly at a loss for words. "I was scared," she whispered. "I was ashamed. I thought if I just pretended everything was normal, maybe it would be. Maybe it would all work out somehow." "And Jonathan?" I asked, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. "Does he know?" Angela nodded miserably. "He knows. He wanted me to leave you, to be with him, but I couldn't. I loved you too much. Or I thought I did. I don't know anymore." I stood up abruptly, needing to move, to do something to dispel the nervous energy coursing through my body. "I need some air," I muttered, heading for the door. As I stepped outside, the cool evening air hit my face, providing a brief moment of clarity amidst the chaos of my thoughts. Everything I had feared, everything I had suspected, had turned out to be true. The life I thought I had, the future I had planned, it had all been built on a lie. I don't know how long I stood out there, staring at nothing, before I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Robert. "I'm so sorry, son," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "We never wanted this for you. We never thought Angela would." He trailed off, seemingly at a loss for words. I turned to face him, seeing the pain and disappointment etched into the lines of his face. "What happens now?" I asked, feeling lost and adrift. Robert squeezed my shoulder. "That's up to you," he said. "But know this. Whatever you decide, Linda and I are here for you. Your family, regardless of what's happened." His words provided a small comfort, a tiny island of stability in the sea of uncertainty I now found myself in. I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. Over the next few days, I moved through life in a daze. I filed for divorce, the paperwork feeling surreal in my hands. Angela made no attempt to fight it, seeming to have retreated into herself entirely. Jonathan disappeared from our lives, unable or unwilling to face the consequences of his actions. I heard through mutual friends that he had moved out of state, leaving Angela to deal with the fallout alone. As I signed the final divorce papers, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was sadness, of course, for the life and love I had lost, but there was also a sense of relief, of a weight being lifted. The truth, as painful as it was, had finally come to light. I knew the road ahead would be difficult. The wounds inflicted by Angela's betrayal would take time to heal. But as I walked out of the lawyer's office, I felt a glimmer of hope. This was an ending, yes, but it was also a beginning, a chance to start over, to build a new life based on honesty and trust. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I took a deep breath, feeling as if I could truly breathe for the first time in months. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape, and for now that was enough.
I stepped outside, holding a leash, ready to take my dog for a walk and enjoy a short run. As I observed my neighbors starting their cars and heading to work, I let out a deep sigh, realizing I had no office or workplace to rush to anymore. Following my business's bankruptcy, I was stuck with a huge pile of debt, and I'd be spending another day at home, trying to revive my once thriving business, which had met with nothing but failure. The weight of these setbacks left me feeling lost in a world that continued moving forward without me. I noticed my neighbor James walking over from his well-maintained driveway. James ran a successful car import business and often had different luxury cars parked outside his house. Today was no exception, and James walked confidently with a big grin. James greeted me cheerfully, almost too cheerful. I responded with a forced smile, even though I noticed his grin seemed to grow wider. I remarked on another day of relaxation for him, though his comment stung. I calmly mentioned that every day brings its own challenges. James just chuckled and said he had cars to import, then strolled away. I watched him go, reminding myself not to let his insensitive remarks affect me. I knew some people couldn't resist the urge to gloat. Returning home used to bring me great comfort, but now it felt like stepping into a storm, not because of the walls or the furniture, but because of someone who lived there, my wife, Nicole. Nicole, who worked as an insurance agent, had grown distant and cold since my financial troubles began. The difference was stark. Gone were the days when she would excitedly call me to come home early for a romantic dinner or snuggle on the couch for a movie. Our conversations, once warm and affectionate, had become brief and mechanical. The home that had once been a sanctuary of love now felt like a reminder of what we had lost. I attempted to bridge the growing gap between us by mentioning the times when Nicole used to check on me during the day. Nicole responded curtly without looking up from her papers, indicating that things change. One evening, after returning from work, I gathered the courage to approach Nicole, driven by my longing to rekindle the closeness we had once shared. I softly brought up our first anniversary, recalling the candlelight dinner on the terrace and our dance under the stars. Nicole looked up from her laptop with an unreadable expression and inquired about the purpose of my remarks. I confessed, saying, I miss us. I miss how things used to be. She audibly sighed, closed her laptop, and explained that she didn't have time for this at the moment, as she was swamped with work. She emphasized that being at home didn't grant her the luxury to sit around and reminisce. I felt a sharp sense of rejection and expressed my desire to spend time together as we used to. Nicole's eyes hardened as she mentioned that times had changed, highlighting her responsibilities while I pursued my activities. She indicated that she didn't have time for sweet talk and suggested that we could discuss things when she wasn't buried with work. I nodded, feeling the weight of the distance between us. All right, Nicole, whenever you're ready. As I walked away, the cold silence of our home felt more pronounced than ever. While walking through the park with my dog, a newfound optimism began to well up within me. Despite the failure of my business, I realized it was just one obstacle in the grand scheme of life. I whispered to myself, patting my dog, "It's just another challenge. I can and will rise again." Upon returning home from the dog walk, I noticed Nicole at the dressing table, gracefully applying lipstick and makeup. Her reflection caught my eyes, evoking memories of the early days of our love. I approached her with a gentle smile and complimented her beauty. Nicole didn't even glance at me. She continued applying her makeup. A moment later, when she was finished, she looked at her own reflection and smiled, remarking, "I am beautiful." In an effort to bridge the gap between us, I casually inquired about her work schedule for the evening. She paused, eyeing me curiously. "Around 7, I think. Why?" I winked and replied, "Oh, no reason. Just thought I'd ask." In my heart, I planned a surprise. Tonight, I would prepare a home-cooked dinner, complete with her favorite wine. It was a small gesture, but perhaps it could mark the beginning of healing our bond and regaining her attention. After all, mending our relationship might just be the motivation I needed to rebuild my career. Was this response better or worse? I spent the day refreshing our home, with upbeat music playing in the background. I wanted the atmosphere to radiate warmth and welcome for Nicole's return. With every clean surface, washed dish, and empty trash, I felt a small sense of accomplishment. After making our home shine, I headed to the grocery store to gather ingredients for the evening's dinner. As an afterthought, I decided to visit the wine store to get Nicole's favorite wine. Upon entering, the familiar doorbell chime greeted me, and Pam, the saleswoman, recognized me with excitement. Pam greeted me, saying it had been a while and asking how I'd been. I gave a half smile and replied that I had had better days, but was getting by. I inquired if they had a bottle of the rose wine, to which Pam playfully raised her eyebrows and teased about planning a romantic evening at home. I chuckled, attempting to sound nonchalant, and confirmed that it was something like that. I mentioned that Nicole had been there about an hour ago and had picked up a bottle of the same wine. Pam seemed to realize she might have said too much, and she stammered, suggesting that maybe Nicole was planning her own surprise. Clearing her throat, she efficiently wrapped the bottle for me, hoping to change the subject. As I headed home, my hopeful mood was replaced by a swirl of thoughts. I contemplated the possibilities. Could Nicole also be preparing a surprise for me? But why would she buy the wine in the afternoon? I gripped the steering wheel, a mix of anticipation and anxiety taking hold. I decided not to jump to conclusions. One thing was certain: I'd find out soon. Pulling into my driveway, I took a deep breath to calm my racing thoughts and set to work. The aroma of the dinner I'd prepared filled the house, offering a temporary distraction from my swirling thoughts. I glanced at the clock. 7:45. Nicole was usually punctual. Maybe her work held her up. I tried to reassure myself, but a nagging feeling lingered. Sitting in our dimly lit dining room, the table set for two, I occasionally checked my phone, hoping for a call or a message from Nicole. The house remained quiet, except for the soft ticking of the wall clock. Each passing moment heightened the mystery of Nicole's plans. Finally, around 8:30, my phone rang, and I recognized Nicole's ringtone. I answered quickly. "Hey!" Nicole's voice came through, rushed and slightly breathless. "Hey, babe, where are you?" I asked, masking my concern. "I'm so sorry, Robert," she replied hurriedly. "An unexpected business trip came up and I couldn't turn it down. My boss insisted." I tried to digest the news. "Oh, okay. But can't you leave in the morning or something?" "I'm actually already on my way there." She sighed and added, "It's a significant opportunity. You could open some doors for me." I took a deep breath. I wanted to be understanding, especially considering my recent setbacks. "I understand. I wish you had told me sooner, though." I know, Nicole replied, the rush in her voice evident. "Everything happened so fast. I really have to go, Robert." I looked at the beautifully set table and the dinner I'd prepared. "All right, take care, Nicole. Call me when you can." Nicole's voice softened. "Okay, I will. I'll be back soon. Bye. And by the way, I don't know how long it's gonna last. Maybe like 2 weeks or so." As the call ended, I sank into a chair, my shoulders slumping under the weight of the evening's turn of events. I struggled to piece together the puzzle of my thoughts. The unexpected business trip seemed plausible, but the earlier wine purchase kept bothering me. Maybe she simply wanted to unwind during her trip and didn't mention it. I tried to rationalize, attempting to push aside the cloud of doubt forming in my mind. I took a deep breath, urging myself to focus on the present. Right in front of me was a delicious meal, and I was reluctant to let it go to waste. With renewed determination, I served myself some food and moved to the living room. The soft glow of the TV filled the room as I switched it on. The familiar sounds of a game in progress greeted me. I decided to immerse myself in it, temporarily pushing aside my concerns. Sometimes, a little distraction was all I needed to find clarity. I relaxed on the couch, thoroughly enjoying the game's excitement. An occasional chuckle escaped my lips, indicating my genuine amusement. When my glass ran dry, I strolled to the kitchen for a refill. The evening's anxieties began to fade, replaced by a warmer, lighter feeling. As I passed the study, an unexpected light caught my eye. The computer screen was illuminated, something that typically happened when notifications came in or if it was disturbed. Curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped into the study, switching on the overhead light. I mused to myself that maybe someone had left the computer on after having one too many drinks. But just as I was about to leave, another noise from the computer halted me in my tracks. A small pop-up in the screen's lower corner grabbed my attention, displaying the message, "Photos successfully synced." With raised eyebrows, I approached the computer and clicked on the notification. The screen showed the loading icon for a moment before revealing a list of files, all time-stamped from just hours ago. Tentatively, I opened one of the files, and the image started loading from top to bottom, gradually revealing a familiar face. As the image continued to load, Nicole's smiling face appeared, and her surroundings became clearer. By the time the image fully rendered, my heart sank. There she was, my wife, playfully taking a selfie while sitting on her boss's lap. The realization weighed heavily on me, and I slumped into a nearby chair, holding my head in my hands. All the doubts and suspicions that I had pushed aside came rushing back, now confirmed by the undeniable truth on the screen. The room seemed to close in on me as I stared at the image. The playful glint in Nicole's eyes, the familiarity with which she leaned into her boss. It all painted a story that I didn't want to believe. The wine I had consumed churned uneasily in my stomach. I returned to the list of files, clicking on another one. A sequence of photos revealed Nicole and her boss at a fancy bar. In some pictures, they were laughing and toasting with their glasses. In others, they were engaged in deep conversation, their faces close together. With each image, the reality of the situation became more evident. The evening's attempts to rekindle our relationship, the dinner I had prepared with care, it all seemed to taunt me now. A confusing mix of anger, pain, and betrayal flooded me, and most of all, I felt an overpowering sense of loss. I got up and returned to the living room, no longer interested in the wine I held. I was now looking for something stronger. With a light drizzle outside, I put on my coat and headed out. Slowly, I made my way to the liquor store. As I walked, my heart ached with pain. I could feel myself shattering into numerous pieces. Memories of the joyful times I shared with Nicole replayed in my mind, but now they were tinged with sadness. The question, why, echoed repeatedly. Why did Nicole grow distant? Was it because I had failed as a provider? I remembered the times when my business was thriving, when we both had big dreams. I had once enthusiastically promised Nicole the latest Mercedes, a symbol of success and luxury, but I never followed through on that promise. Could that unkept promise be a part of why she distanced herself? Or was it something more? It was hard to pinpoint one reason. Perhaps it was a combination of many small things, overlooked moments, and unspoken emotions. All I knew for certain was that our relationship had changed, leaving me with a profound sense of loss and confusion. I entered the store, rainwater dripping from my face and soaking my coat. Pam, upon recognizing me, noticed the fading smile on my face and paused for a moment, searching for the right word. "Hey, Robert," she began gently. "Having a tough day?" My voice was low, almost a whisper. "Whiskey, please." Pam, perceptive as always, sensed that something was amiss. "Are you sure about that? You know, if you need someone to talk to." But I simply shook my head, interrupting her. "Just the whiskey, thanks." I took the bottle, offered a brief, wary smile, and left the store. I didn't wait until I got home to open the whiskey. After a few swallows, the world began to spin. The drink heightened my emotions, breaking down my usual defenses. Stumbling a bit, I began speaking louder to strangers passing by. "Hey there," I slurred, pointing at no one in particular. "Do you know my wife? She's off somewhere having the time of her life with her boss, and here I am, celebrating." I laughed bitterly, my words dripping with sarcasm. "Yep, a one-man party. That's me." As time passed, my speech became increasingly incoherent. I began to sing fragments of a song that had played in my home earlier, the same song meant to accompany a romantic dinner for two. My voice wavered, sometimes staying on key, other times going entirely off tune. The sadness in my rendition was palpable, the melody mirroring my broken heart. Stumbling along the sidewalk, I realized I had lost my whiskey bottle. Thinking I had finished it, I decided to return to the store for another. As I swayed and muttered to myself, I reached into my pocket for money, but it was nowhere to be found. It was then that I noticed an older man nearby, watching me with a mix of concern and curiosity. I raised my voice and my words slurred together as I confronted the old man, asking if he had something to say. The elderly man, wearing glasses and carrying a worn-out backpack, appeared surprised by my aggression at first. However, my tone quickly shifted from confrontational to desperate. I apologized to him, my voice breaking, and explained that I really needed a drink right now. I asked if he could spare $20. The old man sighed and reached into his pockets, pulling out a few crumpled dollar bills from his shirt pocket. He told me it was all he had, and extended the money to me. Still unsteady on my feet, I accepted the money and mumbled my thanks. Then I suggested that he join me for a drink, but the old man gently declined. expressing concern that I had already had enough. I was about to respond defiantly when my stomach turned and I vomited onto the pavement. The mist had soaked everything around, and the cold was settling in. I, wet and disoriented, leaned against a brick wall with my eyes closed, trying to catch my breath. The old man observed with a furrowed brow, expressing worry. He prodded gently, asking if I lived nearby. In my hardly coherent state, I simply murmured that I wanted to sleep. Surveying the nearly deserted street with the dim light from a nearby lamppost casting long shadows on the wet pavement, the old man expressed concern that it wasn't a suitable place to sleep, especially in such weather conditions. He mustered his strength and helped me to my feet, taking most of my weight. Encouraging me, the old man led me toward a nearby bridge. Below the bridge, hidden from the rain and prying eyes, was a small makeshift shelter that served as the old man's temporary home. It was constructed from discarded materials and tarps, offering limited comfort, but at least being dry and relatively warm. I stirred awake, the soft chirping of morning birds filling my ears. My surroundings seemed unfamiliar, a murky haze blurring my vision. My skull throbbed with pain from the previous night's excesses. I winced as I tried to make sense of where I was. The dim light revealed a simple wooden shelter. With a groan, I pushed back the curtain and stepped outside, attempting to orient myself. Next to a gentle river, an elderly man sat calmly, casting his fishing line. His posture remained relaxed, and his hands displayed steadiness, despite the evident marks of time on his skin. The cautiously approaching man greeted me with a knowing smile, and remarked that it took me a while to wake up, and that we had a bit too much fun the previous night. Momentarily taken aback by the man's warmth, I stammered, expressing my lack of memory regarding how I ended up there. The man, named Jim Hughes, chuckled and explained that I had consumed too much alcohol the night before, leading to me passing out on the pavement. He mentioned that it didn't feel right to leave me there, so he brought me to this place. My cheeks reddened with embarrassment, and I thanked Jim while expressing my hope that I hadn't caused any trouble. Jim leaned back, and the sun reflected off his aged eyes as he admitted that I had been a bit loud, particularly in my shouts about my wife. Feeling the weight of the previous night's events, I apologized and explained that I had been going through a tough time lately. Jim's gaze softened, and he offered comforting words, mentioning that he had been in a similar situation, experiencing grief and feeling lost. He shared some wisdom, stating that pain has its own way of healing and that time can help. Jim suggested having breakfast for the moment. Without hesitation, I blurted out a request for something to drink, citing the splitting headache I was experiencing. Jim chuckled, showing he had already anticipated this, and soon the delightful aroma of simmering fish soup filled the air. I watched as Jim skillfully prepared the meal, and I couldn't help but express how heavenly it smelled. Jim replied with a wink, attributing it to an old family recipe perfect for mornings like these. As we enjoyed the warmth and flavor of the fish soup under the open sky, Jim took a moment to offer me some advice. I sighed and expressed my understanding of the need to avoid letting alcohol control one's life. Jim looked at me, his gaze pausing for a moment, and shared his perspective, mentioning that life is complex, and that sometimes it's best to let go and move on, particularly if someone has wronged you. I sensed a touch of sadness in his eyes, but refrained from delving further into the subject. Instead, I thanked Jim for everything, and mentioned my intention to head home. As I prepared to leave, I noticed some intricately carved wooden figures and objects outside the shack. Impressed, I asked if Jim had made them. Jim's eyes sparkled as he confirmed that he had crafted them, explaining that they were a piece of his past life that he still held on to, and that woodworking brought him peace. I expressed my admiration, complimenting his talent. A smile blossomed on my face as I continued my journey home, hinting at newfound hope and a fresh start. Upon arriving home, I rushed to my computer and became determined to reach out to local furniture stores in the following days, pitching my ideas with enthusiasm. 1 week later, filled with hope and determination, I retraced my steps to Jim's riverside shack. I expected to find the elderly man there, but only Jim's backpack and jacket lay near the dwelling, as if he had just stepped away. Confusion clouded my thoughts. Where could Jim be? I scanned the surroundings, but the old man was nowhere in sight. Maybe he's out fishing or gathering wood, I thought, considering coming back the next day. As I started my journey back, A small, sharp stone found its way into my shoe. Each step grew increasingly uncomfortable, like an incessant itch I couldn't scratch. I let out a sigh of irritation and found a flat spot to sit down, eager to remove the annoying intruder. However, as I lifted my shoe, my eyes darted past it to a lone figure standing perilously close to the edge of the bridge. In the distance, panic gripped me. The scene looked all too familiar. Without a second thought, I quickly put my shoe back on, not even bothering to tie the laces. I shouted with desperation as I saw the person too close to the edge of the bridge, fearing the worst. I hoped that with each rapid step, I could reach them in time, praying they would hear me and step back to safety. My feet thudded against the wooden planks of the bridge, and as I got closer, Jim's figure became clearer. Initially relieved to find my friend, my smile disappeared when I noticed a coiled rope on the ground next to Jim, replacing my relief with gut-wrenching fear. Jim's eyes, filled with pain and unshed tears, met mine, conveying the despair that words couldn't express. Without hesitation, I approached Jim with slow and deliberate movements, careful not to startle him. I reached out and put an arm securely around his shoulders. We stood there together, two souls on that bridge, sharing a moment of raw vulnerability. I tightened my grip, feeling Jim's body tremble. As Jim's tears finally flowed, I pulled him into a tight embrace, the weight of the moment pressing down on us both. "It's okay," I murmured softly into Jim's ear, my voice steady and reassuring. "I'm here. We'll face this together." Sitting side by side on the bridge, Jim slowly began to share his story with me, unraveling the threads of his life step by step. He began by mentioning his service to the country and his job at a food processing plant, emphasizing that it may not have been glamorous, but it was honest labor. Jim's voice carried a weary tone as he recounted his journey, mentioning that he had secured a small apartment and had done everything he could to provide for his daughter, who meant the world to him. The weight of his memories was palpable as he rubbed his forehead. He continued, explaining that he lost his job when the plant downsized and missed a rent payment, leading to his eviction just a week later. Jim expressed how he had felt like he had nothing and no safety net. With pain etched in his eyes, Jim continued his story, describing how it had felt like every door was closing on him. He mentioned returning to his hometown with the hope of better luck, but faced difficulties due to his lack of a permanent address. Even job interviews ended in rejection because of his history of job loss. Jim looked down and fidgeted with his hands, conveying his anguish as he recounted how he was picked up for sleeping in places he shouldn't have been and fell seriously ill. He shared the scarcity of assistance and how he eventually found refuge in a friend's van, which was temporary. He mentioned stumbling upon the shack by the bridge, which had become his makeshift home. He let out a heavy sigh, expressing that the most painful part had been knowing his daughter was out there, thinking her father had abandoned her. Jim had been deeply despondent, feeling lost, and without any hope for a brighter future. He had reached the bridge in a state of despair. My heart unexpectedly went out to Jim. This elderly man, with his gentle demeanor and genuine smile, stirred a protective instinct within me. As we walked back to the shack together, I spoke with genuine warmth, telling Jim that life had thrown some hard punches his way, but he was not alone in this battle anymore. Jim's eyes glistened with a mix of gratitude and astonishment, and my mind raced with possibilities. I had a vision, and Jim possessed the skills. So, I proposed to Jim the idea of partnering with me in starting a small furniture business, possibly beginning with crafting cradles. Jim looked taken aback by the unexpected proposal, but slowly, a glimmer of hope began to shine in his eyes, a light that had been missing for a long time. He asked hesitantly if I would trust him with that endeavor, to which I replied confidently that I wouldn't have offered if I didn't. Over the following 2 weeks, the garage at my house echoed with the sounds of sawing, hammering, and laughter as we skillfully crafted exquisite wooden cradles. Each piece carried a story of hope and fresh beginnings. Jim became more than just a guest in my home. We shared meals, stories, and dreams, becoming like family with each passing day. I loaded the beautifully crafted wooden cradles into my truck and headed to the local furniture stores. The cradles immediately caught the attention of store owners with their intricate designs and expert craftsmanship. When one store owner inquired about the craftsman, I proudly told them about my friend Jim, emphasizing his remarkable talent. It didn't take long for the cradles to gain popularity. Customers appreciated their uniqueness and the exceptional craftsmanship that went into each piece. Word spread, and soon more and more stores were reaching out to me and Jim with orders. One day, my smartphone displayed my wife Nicole's name, filling me with anticipation and memories. In a brief conversation, Nicole mentioned a delay and the possibility of an extended trip abroad. When I inquired about what was going on, there was a moment of silence, followed by Nicole clearing her throat. She then explained her urgent need for a loan. Hesitating due to our history and the abruptness of her request, I eventually conveyed my inability, explaining, "Nicole, I'm sorry, but I can't do that right now." Her irritation was audible, and she sighed and responded sharply with a "fine" and "forget it," before abruptly ending the call. Jim and my collaboration had taken off, and the demand for our finely crafted cradles was on the rise. Our small workspace was quickly becoming inadequate to handle the expanding business. As time passed, it became evident that we needed more space to accommodate our growing enterprise. I recalled a conversation with my friend Mark, who mentioned owning an old barn just outside of town. It was spacious, sturdy, and had been vacant for years. The transition to the barn went smoothly, and we hired a couple of eager local workers who were enthusiastic about learning the craft and becoming part of our growing success. I began to oversee operations more frequently from my home office. One evening, after a long day at the barn, Jim returned home to a pleasant surprise. Upon entering the house, he found me bustling around in the kitchen, which was an unusual sight. Typically, we would share a simple dinner with the rest of the crew back at the barn before calling it a day. However, this evening was different. The table was neatly set, and the delicious aroma filled the air. Seeing Jim standing there, somewhat perplexed, I motioned for him to take a seat at the table. "Please sit down, Jim. Dinner will be ready shortly," I said with a friendly smile. Jim, though confused, complied and took a seat, observing me as I moved about the kitchen with determination. Eventually, I joined him at the table, removing my apron, and my face lit up with a wide grin, piquing Jim's curiosity. "I hope you won't be upset, Jim," I began, my eyes gleaming with an indescribable emotion. Before Jim could inquire further, the doorbell rang. I quickly answered it, and a moment later, a young girl hesitantly entered the room. Her eyes filled with curiosity as she took in the unfamiliar surroundings. A woman followed closely behind. Jim's face shifted from pale to flushed with emotion as he recognized his daughter, Mindy. He rose from his seat, stumbling slightly as he rushed towards her. They embraced tightly, their emotions needing no words to convey their feelings. Behind them, I stood with the young girl, Kristen, smiling warmly at the heartwarming reunion. Mindy's voice quivered as she spoke amidst tears, expressing, "I thought I'd never see you again, Dad." Jim choked out with a trembling voice, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have reached out." In a soft tone, Mindy said, "You should have, Dad, but it's okay now," as she stroked her father's hair. Jim nodded, clinging to his daughter as if she would vanish if he let go. He then looked at Kristen and then at Mindy, slightly confused. Mindy laughed and informed him, "Yes, that's Kristen." Jim gazed at his granddaughter, a lovely little girl he had only seen as an infant in pictures. I clapped my hands, gently drawing their attention, and informed them, "Well, everyone, dinner is ready. Please come to the table." As they gathered around the table, Mindy shared her struggles of the past month. Her obsession with finding her father had strained her relationship with her husband, ultimately leading to their separation. It had been a challenging journey, but at that moment, with her father by her side and new friends around, Mindy felt a sense of peace and closure she hadn't experienced in a long time. The warmth and laughter in my home multiplied with Mindy and Kristen's presence. They added a delightful energy that I recognized was healing for me. I invited them to stay, knowing how much it would help my friend rebuild the lost bond. One evening, while engrossed in paperwork in my home office, the main door squeaked open. It wasn't Jim or Mindy, and I knew this because they always announced their return cheerfully. Glancing out, I saw Nicole. She appeared weary, with slumped shoulders and dark circles under her eyes. She sighed, dropped her bags, and stretched. That trip was quite an experience. I watched her silently, a furrow forming on my forehead. She walked past me and slumped on the living room sofa, every move reflecting her exhaustion. Taking a deep breath, I approached her. I hesitated for a moment before sitting beside her, maintaining a bit of distance. Nicole glanced at me, trying to gauge my feelings. "Look, Robert, I know things have been complicated, but—" I raised a hand, interrupting her. "Did you have your phone sync turned on?" I asked, my voice low. Nicole looked puzzled, but realization soon crossed her face, her eyes widening in shock. I swallowed hard, holding back my emotions. "I saw the pictures, Nicole. I didn't need to see more than a few to understand." She moved closer, desperation in her eyes. "Robert, please listen. It's not how it seems. We were just—" I stood up abruptly, cutting her off. "I wish I hadn't seen those photos, Nicole. But now that I have, things can never be the same. I won't pretend everything's okay." Nicole's voice trembled as she pleaded, "Robert, just give me a chance to explain." I shook my head. "I think it's best if you leave. Please." Nicole's tone escalated, her frustration evident. "So this is it? You won't even hear me out? Fine, leave. But just remember, no one will ever stand by you the way I did. No one will love you like I did." The sound of the front door creaking open interrupted the tension in the room. Jim, having just entered, froze. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he decided to give them some privacy and quietly retreated, gently closing the door behind him. Nicole's demeanor shifted as her attempts to assert herself failed. She appeared genuinely remorseful. "Robert, I'm truly sorry," she whispered. While I acknowledged her apology, I firmly requested that she leave. As Nicole exited, a cheerful Kristen was playing on the lawn. She spotted me and rushed over, hugging my legs tightly. The innocent embrace seemed to emphasize the contrast between the past and a potential future. Nicole watched, taking in the scene. A pang of realization struck her. Perhaps someone else would indeed offer me the love and respect I deserved, something she had been unable to provide.
Before that chaotic alley, my life had a sense of routine. I had just finished intense training with my fellow airborne rangers at Fort Benning and was on a weekend leave. After the grueling experience, a few of us met at Mulberry Bar and Grill to relax. Despite being exhausted from the drive, I joined my friends for drinks, unaware that this night would change everything. After leaving the bar, I took a shortcut through an alley to reach my car faster. I wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble found me. That's when I met Alana. At first, I didn't realize what was happening, but the tension was undeniable. My military instincts kicked in immediately. I encountered her in the middle of an attack. 2 men stood in the alley, one armed with a knife. "My name's Blake Ritter." I was trying to avoid a longer walk to my car, still in my full Ranger uniform. Despite my exhaustion, adrenaline took over as I assessed the situation. One man was armed, the other wasn't, and I had no weapon. But I had a plan. I stepped forward confidently, hoping to defuse the situation. "Gentlemen, I think the lady wants to be left alone." The man with the knife, half-dressed and sneering, didn't back down. "Screw you, soldier boy," he said, making his move. I focused on positioning the unarmed man to my left, knowing what I needed to do. The attacker lunged at me, but using my training, I managed to redirect his movement, causing him to accidentally injure his partner. He then slashed at me, and though I tried to dodge, I was still wounded. The pain was blinding. He came at me again, and though I partially dodged, his knife still pierced my chest just inches from my heart. He snarled, not caring that I seemed unfazed, though I was terrified. He reached for my tunic, but I caught his arm and, fueled by adrenaline, broke it at the elbow. His scream gave me a brief surge of energy. I disarmed him, drove his blade into his ribs, and twisted. He was dead, but I wasn't sure if I'd survive. I saw the girl move just as I collapsed to the ground. At least I'd won my final fight. Everything went dark. I welcomed it, needing to be alone. And I was. The quiet room and the monitors were the first signs I had survived. Barely moving, I scanned the ICU with my remaining eye. Soon, a nurse came in, pressed a button, and a doctor followed. I was examined for 20 minutes, and they confirmed I was alive. How observant. The morning shift woke me to check my vitals, followed by breakfast and a nurse who cleaned me up. Then the cops arrived. "You Blake Carson?" the short one asked. "That's the rumor," I said. "No ID on me to prove it." "You're a hero, Mr. Carson," he said. "Well, that's good, right?" I replied. "That's good," added the tall cop. "Did the girl survive?" I asked. "Yes, she's in another ward. Pretty banged up, but she asked about you. Said you handled those 2 guys well. Wants to see you to thank you," said the short cop. Tell her it's not necessary. I'm not big on sentiment, I said. Well, you saved her life. Those two guys were repeat offenders. One was a butcher. They were suspects in 12 courtesan disappearance over the last 2 years. The DA owes you too. They're dead? I asked. Yeah, the tall cop said. Both very dead. Good. Couldn't have happened to worse guys, I said. The doctors were worried about my chest wound. I lost my eye. They'd hoped to save it, but no luck. For a moment, I thought about changing my name to Jack One-Eye. That would have been neat. Maybe I still could. On about the 5th day, I had a visitor. A tall, slender woman in her 20s, wearing a smock, walked in. Hi, she said. Hi, can I get some more water? I'm pretty dry, I replied. Sure, but I'm not a nurse. I'm Alana Nelson, she said. Oh, sorry. The smock threw me off, I said. She refilled my cup and handed it back. I'm the woman whose life you saved. I had to come thank you. The doctor said I could have a few minutes before I leave today. I've been upstairs until now. I looked at her, not remembering much since she'd been in rough shape last time we met. Well, you're welcome. Just doing what any knight in shining armor would do, I joked. You saved my life. I won't forget that, she said. I briefly thought a date would be a nice reward, but quickly pushed that thought aside. She was a sufferer. Really, it was nothing. I was just lucky to be there, I said. I was the lucky one. I owe you dinner at the very least, she said. When you're out of here, I'd like to visit you. Maybe lunch or dinner. Sure, I said. Looked like I was going to get that date after all. While I was laid up, some of my ranger buddies visited, making jokes about being invincible and rescuing damsels in distress. Even Colonel Johnson stopped by. Despite losing my eye, I felt pretty good at first. The bad news? My injuries got me discharged. I loved being a ranger, so that was a tough blow. All that training down the drain. Damn. 2 weeks later, I was released. Alana must have had an inside source because she was waiting in the lobby when I came down. Hi there, soldier, she greeted me. If you don't have any plans, how about spending the day with me? Lunch, dinner, wine, whatever. This was turning out even better than I expected. No plans at all. They were going to call me a cab. Then it settled. I'm driving, and you're my poor, poor man, she said, taking control of the wheelchair and pushing me outside. I can walk, I told her. Hospital rules say I have to ride until I'm out. She nodded, but kept pushing. I didn't mind being her poor, poor man. Once out of the wheelchair, we walked to her car. The sun on my face felt great, and sharing it with her made it even better. Where to now? I asked. My house. It's close by. She smiled, leaving the rest unsaid, and I didn't push for more. She parked in front of a one-story ranch house and signaled for me to get out. Coming around to my side, she took my hand and led me inside. The house was simply but tastefully decorated. Oddly, there was no couch, just 3 wooden benches, likely made from raw tan wood from the Philippines. There were small tables with real flowers and vases scattered around. It was one of the most unusual living rooms I'd ever seen. Clearly, this woman was different. I don't do things like everyone else, she said with a giggle. I'm a bit of a wannabe artist. It's nice, though. Unusual, but nice. Feels like an indoor garden, I said. You nailed it. That's exactly what I was going for, she replied, teasing me. Can I ask something? She said. Sure. Does the eye patch bother you? No, I'm getting used to it. The doctor told me to take good care of my remaining eye and get plenty of rest, I replied. I plan to follow his advice. Smart move, she said. What about your military career? I shrugged. It's over. The colonel pulled some strings so I could stay for 60 more days, but then I'm out. She thought for a moment. Do you have a place to stay? I was going to find a room later. I didn't want to go back to the base, and I need to start looking for a job. Then it's settled, she said. Settled? You're staying here until you find a job in your own place. Her tone made it clear this wasn't up for debate. I wasn't going to argue, especially since she was attractive, and I was open to the idea. That would be a big help, I said sincerely. She changed clothes, and we headed out for lunch at a garden-themed restaurant. Clearly, she had a thing for plants. We sat in a shady spot and talked for 2 hours, learning the basics about each other. I was from California, south of LA, while she was from Columbus, Ohio, but had moved to Georgia for work. She managed an Art Deco shop downtown and had 2 sisters back in Ohio, one married and younger, the other older and single. Alana was single too, and I, of course, was unattached. My only family had been my fellow soldiers. She had a BA in art history, while I was a former ranger with some mechanical skills. After lunch, we were ready to head out. Where to next? She asked. How about the park? I suggested, though I wasn't sure I could walk much after 2 weeks in the hospital. Sounds good, she agreed. We walked along the path with the sound of the brook adding a romantic touch. She took my hand, and we walked together. Then she stopped, turned to me, and kissed me softly. It was a delicate kiss, one I'd remember for years. First kisses are always special. We sat on a bench, and I decided to stop playing naive. I pulled her close and kissed her again, resting my hand on her thigh, which she didn't push away. After a few moments, I stood up, took her hand, and led her to a small, secluded area behind the bench. I laid my shirt down for her to sit on. My bare chest exposed the healing scar from my recent injury, which seemed to intrigue her. She touched it, then kissed it. "That scar makes you mine," she said. "Or maybe I'm yours." "Either way works," I replied. She undressed slowly and lay back on my shirt. I followed suit, and we enjoyed a passionate time together. She was incredible, and I realized I had fallen in love with her. "Was it good for you?" I asked, grinning. "Oh, yes," she replied. I looked at her closely. Faint bruises from the attack still lingered on her ribs and neck, reminders of what she'd been through. It felt strange to be lying there with her after such an intense experience. We hardly knew each other, but we had survived something life-changing together. Alana was tall, around 5'10", a shapely 140 pounds, with light brown hair and mesmerizing gray-blue eyes. She had a porcelain complexion and carried herself confidently. I was shorter at 5'7", steel-hard from ranger training, with average looks and light hair. Her bossy attitude showed she knew her worth, which I admired. That night, we didn't go to dinner. We went to bed, and by morning we were exhausted for all the right reasons. After a sleepless night, I officially moved in the next day, settling into the guest room for privacy, both for me and, I assumed, for her. We lived as roommates with benefits for a few months without ever saying the L word, but that was about to change. One rainy evening, she came home from work a little late. Around 7 p.m., I had finished my shift at Selwyn Motors, where I was now a certified master mechanic, and decided to cook dinner. I had a plan behind this gesture. "Wow, Blake, dinner! Did I forget an occasion?" she asked playfully. "No, well, yes," I said. "I'll explain over dinner." As she went upstairs to change, I rehearsed what I would say. I even disconnected the phone to avoid interruptions. I was ready. When she came back down, looking as lovely as always, we ate and drank her favorite burgundy wine. After her first sip, I stood, knelt by her side, and said, "Alana, I've fallen in love with you. Will you marry me?" She stared at me in shock, and I felt my confidence waver. "Blake, I panicked. "Did I do something wrong?" Tears filled her eyes. "No, you didn't do anything wrong, but Blake, you don't really know me." She motioned for me to sit back down, and I did. "Let me tell you about myself," she said. "I'm a free spirit. Before you, I slept with anyone I wanted, but since meeting you, I've been monogamous, and it surprises me. Yet, I don't fully trust myself. If those old urges return, I'll hurt you, and I couldn't stand that. Do you know what I was doing in the alley that night? I was about to give one of those men a favor when his friends showed up, and they decided to knock me instead. Then you saved me. Since then, I've been so in love with you that no one else has tempted me. But what if, one day, I stray? Could you forgive me? Could I forgive myself?" I took a deep breath. "Alana, I could forgive anything. I couldn't share you, but I love you so much. I'm willing to take the risk. We could go to counseling if needed, whatever it takes. So, will you marry me?" I knew it was a gamble, but I didn't care. I loved her, and I was prepared to fight for her, even if it meant facing the possibility of betrayal. We got married in front of a justice of the peace 3 weeks after that evening. The first 9 years were amazing, not just good. I believe Alana felt the same way. We had 2 children, Miranda and Shelby, in the 2nd and 3rd years of our marriage. We adored them, and our family was happy. When Shelby started school, Alana decided to go back to work. She found a job at an art studio and seemed content. I was glad for her. The job wasn't demanding, just 4 hours in the morning. And while the extra money wasn't necessary, it was nice to have. After about a year, she started working longer hours. She was supposed to pick up the kids from school, but I didn't notice much at first. Then, one day, I came home to find her sitting in the living room with a glass of burgundy, waiting for me while the kids played outside. "Hi, sailor," she greeted me as I walked in, dirty and tired from work. "Hi," I replied, feeling oddly uneasy. She smiled, and we kissed. Then she said, "I have a surprise." "A surprise?" Yes, there's an art show in San Francisco, and Gordon, my boss, invited me to go with him and the artist. We'll be gone for 4 or 5 days. Isn't it exciting? I wasn't thrilled, but didn't know what to say. Yeah, I guess, I replied, clearly not enthusiastic. Honey, it's just a few days, and it's a great chance for me to see some incredible work. Georgia has shows, but nothing like what's on the coast, she explained. We talked for a while, and eventually I agreed. She'd never had an opportunity like this, so how could I refuse? She was leaving Saturday and would return Tuesday or Wednesday. I decided to do something fun with the kids over the weekend. On Saturday, the kids and I took Alana to the airport, had lunch, and waved goodbye as she headed to the departure lounge. I had a bad feeling, but with the kids by my side, it was easier to push it aside. Late Saturday night, she called. She told me they had arrived safely and gave me the number for the hotel where she'd be staying, in case of an emergency. She did say to call herself or anything else. Although I had started working out with some of my old Ranger buddies, Mark Hutchins and Gary Chapin, I believed, without much scientific basis, that exercising helped keep me fit, including protecting my good eye by improving circulation. After a decade of doing it, I was definitely in great shape. We all were. We were like the Three Musketeers, 21st century style. We also became experts with the Awara, a little-known Japanese invention. The Awara was a short stick, 3/5 of an inch in diameter, and 4.5 inches long. If someone knew how to use it, they couldn't lose a fight if they got the first unblocked strike. Literally, could not. We always practiced together at the park for an hour on Sundays, no exceptions, and the rest of the week on our own. We always brought our kids along, too. They kind of mimicked us after practicing what we wanted them to. Both Shelby, my 7-year-old, and Miranda, 8, were tough but polite kids. As far as I knew, neither had ever been in a school fight. Daddy, Miranda said. Mr. Hutchins says I did great today. She was beaming, and so was I. That's awesome, sweetheart. Now go get your brother so we can head out, I said. Shelby was still with Mark, and they looked like mirror images as they practiced the shoddy form over and over. Gary, who had finished his routine, stood nearby, smiling widely. His 14-year-old son, Arthur, was lying on the ground near his 13-year-old daughter, Karen. They were both completely wiped out. I think they were in love, too. After breakfast at IHOP, the kids and I headed to the zoo. It was a fantastic day, and we all went to bed early. Alana called around 6 p.m., first speaking with the kids, then with me. She sounded drained. Yeah, honey, I'm exhausted. The elevators were down for an hour because of a small fire on the ground floor. They put it out quickly, but I didn't want to wait, so I took the stairs, 9 flights, she said. I chuckled. I told you that you should be working out with me and the kids, I joked. We talked for a while, and she told me about the things she'd seen and how amazing it all was. She loved art. But after the call, the uneasy feeling I had since she left came back strong. Then I did something I shouldn't have. I called the hotel and asked about the fire. My heart sank when they said I must be mistaken. There hadn't been a fire. Why would she lie? Without any real evidence, I started to suspect she was having an affair while talking to me. The mind can be a dangerous thing. Tuesday evening, the kids and I picked up my wife from the airport. The kids were excited, so my less than enthusiastic greeting went unnoticed. That night, we had Zex. She did everything to make me happy she was back. I guess I was. But I had questions I wasn't ready to ask. Not yet. The next week was mostly normal, except for 2 things. On Tuesday and Thursday, Alana worked late, not coming home until after 9 p.m. She had never worked past 6:30 before. On both nights, she showered when she got home and claimed she was too tired for Zex. My suspicion grew. I didn't have solid proof, and maybe the lie about the hotel fire had some explanation, but I felt sure I was right. The following Tuesday, Mark and his wife Elizabeth, who were also our neighbors, took care of the kids for the evening. I was parked across from the art shop where Alana worked. That night, my heart broke. I watched as Gordon Crowder wrapped his arms around my wife and kissed her passionately through the shop window. The store was closed and the lights were off except for the security lights behind them. 10 minutes later, they left, got in his car, and drove off. I followed them. The Pine Tree Motel doesn't have a restaurant, but it has rooms. They got one together and went inside. I went home. I'd already picked up the kids and now I waited. Thoughts of liquidation crossed my mind. But before I could do anything, I wanted to confront her first. I hadn't forgotten her concerns before we got married. Now I wondered, how long had this been going on? How many times? She came home around 9:45. I was sitting on the couch with a cup of tea. She froze when she saw me. Blake? Yeah, it's me, I said, taking a sip. Is something wrong? She asked. I don't know. You tell me. Let's start with your night at the pine tree. Her face went pale, and her shoulders slumped. You know, I stayed silent. I'm sorry, Blake. This has nothing to do with you or us. It was just Zex. I warned you I might not be able to give up Zex with other men. I've tried to keep it from you, but I guess I failed, huh? She said. It was the trip, wasn't it? She continued. I knew it was a bad idea. I even thought about bringing you so you wouldn't get suspicious. But Gordon insisted on the whole trip, and you would have complicated things for him. Damn it, she muttered. What's the appeal? I asked, my voice cold and methodical. He's not a big guy, not especially handsome. What's the draw? His tool, she said, and he knows how to use it. What about us, now that I know? I was testing the waters, pushing it, but I wasn't sure I cared anymore. Not after this. You're asking if I'll stop seeing him. My answer is no, you'll just have to deal with it. I don't want to hurt you, Blake, but I'm not going to lie to you. He's going to keep sleeping with me, and that's just how it is, she said. Her matter-of-fact tone was so cold and harsh that I briefly considered teaching her a lesson right then. But I've never touched a woman, and if this was how things were going to be, I'd have to come up with something else. Gordon, though, was a completely different story. He was in serious trouble, though neither he nor my wife at 3:04 a.m. had any idea. I took another sip of tea. Blake, are you okay? She seemed to reconsider, maybe feeling guilty about how coldly she had spoken to me. God, Blake, I'm such an idiot. You saved my life, and this is how I treat you. I still didn't say anything. I just sat there sipping tea, getting angrier by the second. My silence was starting to get to her. Blake, are you going to say something? I stayed quiet. Rangers were trained for psychological warfare, and the game had begun. She touched my shoulder. Blake, say something. For God's sake, talk to me. I didn't. I just looked past her. She switched tactics. Well, if you've got nothing to say, I'm going to bed. Don't come in until you're ready to talk. I didn't look up or move until I heard the bedroom door slam. Good, I thought. She's off balance. Now I've got the upper hand. She had broken my heart, and not just because of the cheating. It was her heartless attitude that made it clear it was her way or the highway. In my mind, the worst-case scenario was that the highway would hurt her more. That night, and for the next month, I slept on the couch. I didn't react when she called to say she'd be late on Tuesdays and Thursdays as usual. We both knew she was with him those nights. Then she added Saturdays to the schedule. I was sure this was her way of trying to push me into talking to her. I did talk to her about the kids, the house, work, everything except her affair. She was becoming anxious. She knew what I was capable of. I caught her watching me nervously when I worked in the yard. My cold demeanor probably had her wondering when everything would explode. The bitter irony was that while I let things drag on, my hatred grew. But so did my sadness. I loved this woman with everything I had, and I believe she loved me too. She just wanted it all. If we had talked, I knew she would have tried to convince me that her affairs were just about Zex and didn't affect our marriage. It almost made me laugh when I thought about how things would eventually unfold. The charade lasted almost a year. We didn't have Zex once during that time, and I never cheated on her or confronted her or her lover about their affair. With the help of Gary and Mark, I had collected a mountain of evidence in case of a divorce. We were also digging into Gordon's life, figuring everyone had something to hide. The progress was slow but steady. Yes, almost every state but New York is no fault. But to ensure I could get custody of the kids, I needed undeniable proof that she was unfit as a mother. It wasn't easy, but I was close. I was a bit surprised she hadn't filed for divorce yet. She was clearly angry and frustrated. She mentioned divorce a couple of times, but I just walked away without responding. Finally, I caught a break. I think she was trying to push me into talking and accepting her affairs. She kicked me out. No talk of divorce, just get out until you're ready to talk and work through our issues. I agreed. This time I looked her in the eye, my own filling with tears. I was genuinely sad about her decision, but I also saw an opportunity. I went upstairs to pack a couple of suitcases. When I came out, I heard her on the phone. She was in the kitchen, but I could hear her clearly. Your plan backfired, Gordon. No, he's leaving. No, damn it, he's really leaving. Don't you get it? No, I said no. Win what? Are you kidding me? You're not half the man he is, except for your tool. You, ha ha ha. One-on-one with him? You'd last as long as a fart in a hurricane. No, forget it. We need to cool off for a while. Yes, but not anytime soon. I need to get my man back. Yeah, bye. I came down the stairs and she was waiting by the door. Blake, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Please don't leave, she said. I pushed past her. Goodbye, I said, and walked out. I ended up at the Pine Tree, the same motel she and her lover had used. I even got the same room they had at least once. The place didn't have a restaurant, but it was cheap, close to my work, and had a bar next door. Alana sat on the bench behind the house, unsure if she felt worse for herself or for me. Her tears hadn't stopped since I left. She felt like a complete idiot. Her man, the one who had protected, saved, and then married her, the one who had fed, clothed, and loved her, she had betrayed him. And for what? A bigger tool? Selfish? No, that didn't even begin to describe her. She felt like a dirtbag, a vile person. And yet, it had been his choice. He wouldn't have lacked anything from her. She wanted to be with him, to love him, adore him. He had never wanted for anything, or so she rationalized. Gordon never had her like Blake had. Gordon never heard her say, I love you. But Blake heard it every day. How could Blake ever doubt she loved him? She had told him, argued with him, tried to convince him years ago that she wasn't monogamous. Either he hadn't heard or he didn't care. But now, of course, he cared. What could she do now? She didn't even know where he had gone. And what about the kids? God, what a mess. A week later, the doorbell rang just after she had gotten the kids off to school. Hi, babe, said the tall, dark-haired man with the mustache. Gordon, I thought I told you we needed to cool it for a while. Yeah, but I'm too excited, he replied. You can't sit around here moping forever. You need to get out and do something. She knew what he meant, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Still, she did feel trapped and hopeless. A couple of drinks somewhere sounded nice. No Zex for you today, Gordon. I just can't do it. But yeah, a couple of drinks wouldn't hurt. I could really use one right now, she said. Sounds good to me. No pressure. We'll just have some drinks, and you can vent to me. God knows I need someone to listen, she said. Blake sure won't. I don't even know where he is. I'm losing my mind. He'll be back soon. Trust me, said Gordon. For the kids, if not for you. Guys like him, they're all about family. He actually thinks Zex equals love. She shot him a dirty look, but deep down she knew Gordon was right. Blake had been gone a week, and it made sense he'd call soon, at least to arrange something for the kids. She'd use that chance to finally get him to talk. For a brief moment, she realized how crazy it was to want to fix things with her husband while going out for drinks with her lover. But the feeling disappeared before she could think more about it. She changed, and they headed to the Pine Tree Lounge. Gary arrived at the Pine Tree Motor Lodge at noon, just as planned. He had the envelope and knocked on room 103. Hey, Gary, I said. You doing okay, man? Gary asked as he entered the room. This place is kind of cheap for you, isn't it? It's the room they used to screw me over, I said, my voice filled with bitterness. It has sentimental value, you might say. You got the stuff? Oh yeah, he's been stealing from his job. He's a driver and skims about 5% off every delivery. An audit will show it for sure, Gary said. Film at 7? I asked. Yep, audio too. He's going down, Gary confirmed. Where's Mark? I asked. Doing what you asked. He's delivering the evidence to his company's bosses. Should be done by now. How'd you get all this? I asked. Easy. We followed the idiot. He's not very smart. Honestly, I'm shocked he hasn't been caught yet. The guy's a total moron. Borderline dumb, and that's being generous, Gary said. Blake, what's your plan? Mark and I are worried about you, man. You need to stop hiding out here. Have you even seen your kids? No, I haven't seen them since I left. I miss them, I admitted. I'm going to have to go back. I hate the idea of showing up there, but I can't stay away too long or she might turn them against me. I doubt that, Gary said. I know you won't want to hear this, but I've known women like Alana, lots of them. They do love their husbands. They just don't see the damage in messing around on the side. No, man, she loves you. She's just clueless. Alana's smart in some ways, but when it comes to Zex, she's a complete idiot. Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? My problem is figuring out how to fix this. And do I even want to now? She screwed me over, I said. Anyway, I think it's time for a drink. What do you say? There's a bar next door. The two of us were sitting at the bar when they walked in. Jesus, Gary muttered. What? I asked. Blake, buddy, Gary said, locking eyes with me. I need you to stay calm. What are you talking about? I asked, confused. Blake, take a deep breath. Your wife just walked in with her boyfriend, Gary said. He grabbed my arm, making it hard for me to turn around. But straining, I managed to look over my shoulder and saw her and her lover. She didn't see me right away, but then she did. Alana's hand shot up to cover her mouth. Even through her fingers, I could tell what she was mouthing. "Oh my God, no." She started crying silently. The a-hole looked in my direction and smirked. My face darkened. I stared at them with dead eyes. Alana reached out her arm toward me, but I sneered. "Screw you," I said quietly. So she had to read my lips to understand. Then I turned my attention to him and pointed. He widened his stance and crossed his arms, daring me. That almost got him eliminated, though he had no idea how close he came. Gary looked down at the floor. I was a mess of emotions, humiliated. The guy was around 6 feet tall while I was only 5'6". Alana, especially in heels, towered over me. She was wearing heels now. The sight wasn't flattering. But one thing I knew, after I broke his legs, Gordon 10-inch would be a lot closer to the ground. Gary saw it coming and gripped me harder. "No, he's going to jail. Bide your time," Gary said. I looked at him, the wisdom of his words finally sinking in. I nodded. I pointed at the a-hole again, who just smirked. Oh, how badly I wanted him in that moment. But instead I had to slink away like a knocking dog with my tail between my legs. God, it was humiliating. Alana watched the scene, and I think she might have been crying. But at that moment, I hated the mother of my children, and that terrified me. I was so close to liquidating them both. While the a-hole was oblivious, I think my wife sensed it. I walked out of the bar without looking back. As I reached my car, I fumbled with my keys, dropping them. As I bent down to pick them up, I heard her voice. "Blake, I'm so sorry," she said. "I really am. But Blake, we weren't doing anything. We weren't going to. He just bought me a drink because I was upset and sad about you leaving." I turned and looked at her. "You kicked me out, so what's the issue?" "I did, but I didn't mean it. I'm sorry for being too something." "Try cruel and unyielding," I said. "Blake, I want to make it right. I owe you," she said. Her words filled me with so much anger that I could barely hold it in. "You let me screw you. Consider the debt paid," I said. "And hell, I would have saved you without needing payment. So go screw yourself, or let him do it." I was falling apart. My voice cracked. Then the worst moment of my life happened. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. My chest heaved, my heart shattered. Everything came flooding out, silent and soaked with tears. She came to me and wrapped her arms around me. For a moment, I felt safe, loved. Then reality hit me again. I pushed her off violently, causing her to stumble. "Get away from me," I said between sobs. If I hadn't been humiliated before, I certainly was now. I heard her cry as I got into my car and drove off. "Blake, I love you. Come home to me." Meanwhile, Gary had kept her lover pinned down inside the bar, while Alana and I had our scene outside. Just as I pulled out of the lot, Loverboy came out with Gary right behind him. "Get out of my way, idiot," Gordon said to Gary. Now, Gary isn't small like me. He's about 5'10" and 175 pounds. Not huge, but not small either. He kept his cool. "You have no idea how close you came to dying today, idiot. You might want to learn the act of contrition," Gary said. Alana walked over to him. She knew Gary well. He'd been at all our family gatherings with his wife. "Gary, please, I messed up. Tell him I love him. He won't listen to me. Tell him he at least has to come home to see his babies," she said. "I'll tell him," Gary replied. "But you better get that idiot out of town. Blake's really angry and hurt, Alana. You've hurt him deeply." "You tell that coward," Gordon started. Gary reached back and slapped him so hard that Gordon nearly fell to the ground. "Say another word about my friend, and you'll be the one I liquidate." Gary turned and called for a cab since I had abandoned him there. Later that afternoon, Gary showed up at my place, a little annoyed. I had forgotten he didn't have a car. I'd left him to deal with Alana and her lover on his own. I apologized, explaining I wasn't thinking straight. We laughed about how he'd handled Gordon. But on a more serious note, Alana had made her point. I needed to see my kids. Even if it meant showing up looking like a spineless fool, I had to go back. Sooner or later, I'd have to face my wife. It seemed like it was going to be sooner. I arrived at the house the next day at 5 o'clock. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy!" the kids screamed. We hugged, I cried, they smiled, and then we talked. We talked about school, their friends, and everything else. And then they pinned me down. "Daddy, come home to us," Shelby said. "Mama wants you to, too." I started crying again, but quickly choked it back. God, God, I'm such a fool, I thought. It's true, Daddy. Alana entered the room for the first time. She had left us alone until now. Whether she had planned it or not, this was the moment she chose to come in. I had to believe she had orchestrated it to her best advantage. Daddy is coming home to us, kids. Starting tonight, she announced. We all want you back, Blake. The kids, and especially me. I looked at her. She could read my thoughts. There was no doubt. Blake, I'm sorry for everything. Please don't let us down. We need you, and we love you. We really do, she said. Her tone was sincere, but her actions the previous day didn't match up. Still, I nodded for the sake of the kids. How long I'd stay was uncertain, probably until her next mistake. Yeah, I backed down. But any dad in my position would understand, even if they wouldn't agree. Alana and I would have to talk it out in the next couple of hours. I talked to the kids before you came. Blake, I want you to know we kind of set you up. But in a good way, I made sure they told you how much they want you back, actively in their lives, she said. As for me, that's all I've been thinking about since you left, she added. And that scene at the lounge? You weren't with your lover planning to, well, have sex? I asked. No, I wasn't. He knew that. I'd been depressed since you left, and I needed a drink. Several, really. He invited me out for that reason. And, of all places, we ended up there. You can imagine my surprise. Probably not unlike yours, she said. I smirked. I guess not. So here we are. And what does that mean? I still can't accept what you've been doing. I can't. I know what I said when we got engaged, but that was then, and this is now. So is Gordon your man, or am I? You can't have both of us. It's one or the other. Do you understand that? I understand. But can I ask you a question? She said. What is it? What is sex to you? Does it define our relationship? Does it define our marriage? I paused for a moment. For me, it's the most intimate and private thing we share. It's how we create our children. It's a significant way I show my love for you, my wife. She nodded. It's those things for me too, Blake. But all of that is tied to the commitment I made to you, and only to you. Without that commitment, sex is just something we did as teenagers, miles away from anything meaningful. It's just a game kids play. A little more intimate, sure, but still a game. You know the saying, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You've told me yourself you've played that game. Yeah, that's true. But there's something you left out, Alana. You didn't mention our wedding vows. For me, keeping those vows ends the games. It's about building trust and real love. Not puppy love or casual games, but something with responsibility. So now I have a question for you. Go ahead. Where does my coming home leave Gordon? Is he or any other man going to be sleeping with my wife? Be honest. She wasn't prepared for the question. I guess he's out of the picture, she said. Does he know that? Am I going to walk in on phone calls, drive past a motel and see your car next to his? Don't lie to me, Alana. Tell me now. Honestly, we haven't talked since yesterday at the pine tree. So no, he doesn't know yet. I told him we'd have to cool it for a while because you were hurt. And yes, I know, cooling it for a while isn't making him history. But that was then, and this is now. I'm not giving you up. So as of this moment, he's history, she said. She surprised me by getting up and going into the kitchen. She came back with the cordless phone and dialed. Yeah, it's me, she said. Someone on the other end spoke. No, and never again. My man is home. He's sitting across from me right now. No, not ever. Huh? You'll need to find someone else. He doesn't understand our relationship. And no, he's not going to try. Don't call me anymore. Please respect my wishes. It's over. Goodbye. She hung up. One more question. Now that Gordon is out, what about other men? One-night stands, quick flings? Any of it? I asked. I'm going to say a never again, Blake, and I'll try my best. But you'll have to help me. I'm a habitual born, a 304. You'll really need to help me, she said, struggling to finish her sentence. In my heart, I knew she wouldn't be able to stick to her resolve. Oh, I believed she meant it, but I was almost certain it was beyond her control. For now, though, I was doing it for the kids. The day after we talked and I moved back into the house, I went to work. That weekend, Mark and Gary came by with their wives and kids, and we had a barbecue. It was a good time. We didn't hear anything from Gordon. Alana quit her job at the art shop and took a full-time position at an art supply store, which paid better. I was feeling pretty good, safer. Every now and then, I thought I saw a wistful look from Alana, but I also wondered if I was just being paranoid. One day, I was having lunch about a mile from work with my buddy Roger. The restaurant had those almost black windows, like the ones you see on cars, You could see out, but no one could see in. We were sitting by the window halfway through our meal when a stunning woman walked down the sidewalk and met a man right outside our booth. If the window hadn't been there, we could have reached out and touched them. They embraced and kissed. The woman was tall, athletic, and probably in her mid-30s. The man was huge, about 6'6" and 280 pounds. He looked like a defensive end. I smiled. "She's a looker," Roger said. "Wouldn't mind getting a piece of that," I grinned. "Want me to set you up?" He laughed. "You know her?" "Yeah, I do. She's my wife. She'll do anybody. Well, we're getting divorced soon, so if you want, I can ask her for you." Roger spit out his soda all over the table. "Jesus, Blake, that's not funny." "Maybe not, but it's true. She's my wife," I said. I was facing the entrance when the couple walked in. They were halfway to our table when she saw me. She realized I had a clear view of what had happened outside. "Oh my God, Blake." "Yeah, it's me," I said. "You and I have to stop meeting like this." The man gave me a menacing look. He was twice my size, and his contempt for me was obvious. "You know this shrimp?" he asked, turning to Alana. She looked horrified. I stood up, threw a 20 on the table, and started to walk out. The big guy grabbed my arm, probably trying to impress her. I twisted his arm under mine and snapped it at the elbow. He dropped to the floor, screaming. I turned to Alana. "Do you always go for the big guys? Guess I'm not big enough for you," I said. "Blake, we need to talk. It's not what you think." We could hear sirens in the distance, the place filled with cops before I could leave. They cuffed me, but after talking to witnesses, including Roger, they let me go. The paramedics treated the guy, and we left. Alana followed me to my truck. "Blake, we need to talk. It's not what you think," she said. I couldn't believe she said that. For the moment, I found it amusing. Later, I'd probably break down, but right then, the absurdity of it all was what stood out. "And what about what happened on the sidewalk?" I asked. She just stared, silent. Roger and I drove off. That evening, I moved out. Alana didn't fight me. I guess she knew it was over. She couldn't or wouldn't stop her behavior, and I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. She told me that the guy I'd taken down had been hitting on her at the supermarket for weeks, but she always brushed him off. On the one day I decided to have lunch out, she finally gave in. They were planning to go to a motel after lunch. That they ended up where I was eating was pure coincidence. Some higher power was either looking out for me or punishing her. Neither of us was sure which, but the marriage was done. "You really hurt him," Alana said. "He was too big to play with. I had to take him down," I said. "Bad luck for him." "He'll be eating left-handed for a while," she said. "Blake, I'm sorry. I am who I am, and I guess I always will be. I won't fight the divorce, and we'll share custody of the kids," she said. I just nodded. I was angry, relieved, sad. Everything at once. It had been a long road, but we had reached the end. I talked to the kids, told them I needed to get my own place, but that they could visit anytime. They didn't like it, but when I told them I'd take them to the movies on Saturday and plan activities every week, they reluctantly accepted. This time I met up with Gary, Mark, and Roger at the Pine Tree. It had become our hangout. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting to see Alana with some new guy, or maybe even Gordon. But not this time. Not today. A week after I moved out, Gordon was arrested. I'd nearly forgotten about him, but he finally got what was coming. If he was shocked, Alana was even more so. She attended his trial and basically stood by him as he went down for a 5-year sentence. I later found out she visited him in jail. It was a sad scene. They were clearly falling for each other. All that talk she'd given me about him not meaning anything went out the window. I guess she needed someone who understood her particular needs. Someone like her. The upside was that she didn't blame me. She knew I'd orchestrated it, but I wasn't the one selling stolen goods. They caught him red-handed, putting stolen items into the back of someone's truck. Our divorce was finalized peacefully within 6 months. Irreconcilable differences. The kids stayed with Alana, and I made her promise no man would ever live in the house. I was there every Saturday to see my kids. "Alana, I'll stick to this divorce agreement. You'll get the child support, and I'll be available to babysit whenever you need. But no man who isn't your husband can enter the house. Agreed?" "I'd already made that decision," Alana replied. "You don't have to worry. You saw what happened to Gordon and the guy at the restaurant. Keep that in mind. I'll know if you try anything shady." It was bound to happen, though. Even a guy like me gets lucky once in a while. About a year after the divorce, I met Kelly Halverson. She worked at the novelty shop next to the Pine Tree. I went in to buy a gift for Mark's wife's birthday. Will that be all, sir? The saleslady asked. Your phone number would be nice, I replied. She rolled her eyes and closed the bag. Then she gave me a strange look. 555-0-51296, she said. But shouldn't you ask for my name first? I already know it. It's on your name tag. Kelly Halverson. Oh, right, she said. And yours? Blake Ritter. That night I called her. I was hesitant because I was still tied to Alana in some ways. Divorced, but with lingering feelings, not to mention our kids. The problem was that Alana had too many ties to other men, and I couldn't handle it. So I gave Kelly a shot. We went out for dinner, just to get to know each other. Let me tell you about Kelly. She was 32, about my height, 5'6" or 5'7". She had a bit of extra weight on her slim frame, shoulder-length brown hair, and a rather plain face. All in all, she was the definition of average. But what she lacked in beauty, she made up for in personality. She was working her way through nursing school, held a full-time job, and rarely dated. She was my kind of woman. So how about a second date? I asked as I walked her to her door after that first night. Huh, really? She replied. I don't get many second dates. In fact, you're the first guy to ask me out in a while. I know I'm not that pretty. I'm just me, whatever that is, she said seriously. I sensed she'd been hurt before. Well, we sure had something in common, didn't we? Kelly, you're perfect to me. I don't know your history, but I'd love to take the time to find out. It might take 30 or 40 dates. Sound good? I said, smiling. She eyed me suspiciously. Really? You're not just trying to get me into bed? I laughed. No guarantees, but I'd like to know you better first. If you let me, that is. Over the next few weeks, we dated regularly, working around her school schedule. About 2 months after we met, things changed. After a movie, she handed me her house key as I walked her to the door. I looked at her confused. Well, open the door and let us in, she said. I was surprised. We'd done plenty of making out, but this felt different. I didn't want to take advantage of her. I didn't want it to feel cheap. Then it hit me. I loved her. I really did. I opened the door and motioned for her to go in. She stood by the couch, and I knew what was about to happen. But I also knew something she didn't. I walked slowly toward her, both of us nervous. I stopped about 2 feet away, hands at my sides, and knelt down. Kelly, I love you. Will you marry me? I asked. Her eyes widened. What? Will you do me the honor of marrying me? I don't have a ring yet, but we can pick one out tomorrow if you say yes. Oh, Blake, of course I'll marry you. She knelt down and kissed me long and hard. We sank to the floor together. She was crying. No tears now. Let's save those for later, I said. We kissed, undressed each other, and spent the night together. The next morning was a new beginning for both of us. We bought the rings later that day and were married at the courthouse 2 weeks later. Kelly's arrival into my life was well received by Alana. The kids called her Aunt Kelly, and we were fine with that. About a year later, Gordon got out on good behavior. Alana visited me to ask if Kelly and I could take the kids for a couple of weeks. I agreed without hesitation. So, what's the occasion, Alana? I asked. Blake, please don't get mad, but she was struggling to get it out. Alana, just say it. I won't get upset. Well, Gordon's getting out the day after tomorrow, she said. We're getting married. Blake? I must have looked confused. I knew she'd been visiting him in prison regularly, but I didn't expect this. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. I see. Blake, Gordon won't come between you and the kids, I promise. We've talked about it. It'll be the same as before, except we're adding him to the mix. He knows we messed up, and now we're moving forward, okay? I nodded. Okay. Just then, Kelly walked in. We're going to have the kids for a couple of weeks, I said. Alana's getting married. Kelly smiled. It was clear the future would be interesting for all of us.